300 years ago, chaos descended upon the world as secret kingdoms and dungeons suddenly appeared, bringing with them an army of terrifying demons. These creatures declared the end of humanity, plunging the world into an age of destruction. But amid the turmoil, a new power emerged, those known as job changers. These awakened individuals possessed incredible abilities, allowing them to fight back against the monstrous invasion and push humanity away from the brink of extinction. Over time, job changers became the backbone of society, venturing into hidden kingdoms in search of wealth, resources, and greater power. Nations prioritized their training, ensuring that every person had the chance to awaken their class at the age of 18. The long-awaited day of awakening arrived for a group of students. To awaken a class, each student had to touch a magical blue crystal. One by one, they stepped forward. Some succeeded, like Li Wei from Class 3, who awakened as a swordsman, and Wang Hao, who became a crafter. But not everyone was so fortunate. Wang Wei from Class 2 failed to awaken any class, earning the dreaded label of classless. Awakenings were divided into three main categories: combat, support, and creation. The combat category was the most sought after, as it provided the strength to fight monsters directly. Meanwhile, the creation category was considered the weakest, as those who awakened it lacked direct combat ability and were often looked down upon. As more students took their turns, excitement and disappointment filled the room. A purple-haired student celebrated after unlocking the powerful magic swordsman class, while another student broke into tears upon receiving a creation-based class, knowing it would make him an outcast. Then came the moment everyone had been waiting for, Jiang Chen's turn. As he placed his hand on the crystal, something incredible happened. A blinding light erupted from the stone, sending a wave of energy soaring toward the sky. The other students watched in stunned silence. Someone pointed at Jiang Chen, calling him the prodigy of the academy, while whispers spread. Was this the awakening of a divine rank class? The crystal's glow intensified, and in mere seconds, a massive tree of light materialized in the sky, towering over the entire city. This was no ordinary awakening. Throughout history, every divine class awakening had caused a phenomenon capable of shaking the world. And yet, as all eyes fixated on Jiang Chen, he remained unfazed. With one hand still on the crystal, he casually slipped the other into his pocket and simply gazed at the sky, calm, composed, and completely indifferent to the spectacle he had just created. At that moment, Director Wang stepped forward, making his way toward Jiang Chen with a proud expression. He congratulated him, calling him the pride of the academy. While he had always believed Jiang Chen would awaken a combat class, he never expected something as rare as a divine rank awakening. Curious about the details, Director Wang asked Jiang Chen what class he had received. Jiang Chen turned slightly toward him, a small smile playing on his lips. With a hint of surprise, he admitted that his class wasn't combat-related. The director's expression froze. His confident smile wavered as he processed Jiang Chen's words. Unable to hide his shock, he quickly followed up, asking if it was at least a support class. Instead of answering right away, Jiang Chen turned fully toward the director. Extending his hands to the sides, he summoned a set of ethereal, glowing plants that hovered in his palms. He then revealed his class, the Divine Rank Creation class, Spiritual Master. He explained that his abilities were centered around enhancing the growth of plants and nurturing small creatures. Silence filled the room. The shock on Director Wang's face deepened. The excitement from moments ago was suddenly replaced with concern. He sighed, explaining that this was bad news. No matter how rare, a creation class without combat ability would always be seen as useless. One of the professors standing beside the director quickly stepped in, trying to reassure Jiang Chen. He advised him not to be discouraged. After all, spiritual masters were highly valued in research fields. However, he hesitated before mentioning that the special recommendation they had planned for him was no longer possible. Instead, he suggested that Jiang Chen consider a research career, offering to help him get a different letter of recommendation. Before the professor could finish his sentence, Jiang Chen cut him off with a polite smile. Thanking him for the offer, he casually slid his hands into his jacket pockets and turned to walk away. He had other things to do. Meanwhile, the murmurs among the students grew louder. Laughter broke out as one student turned to his friend, shaking his head. What a joke, he scoffed. I thought he awakened some kind of overpowered divine combat class, but it turns out it's just a creation class. His friend smirked, placing a hand near his face. Life's full of surprises, he mused. Everyone thought the Academy's prodigy would become a powerhouse. But now, no matter how smart he is, he's just another nobody. Jiang Chen paid no attention to the growing mockery around him. Hands still in his pockets, he walked toward the exit without a word. The taunts continued as students whispered behind his back, enjoying the irony of the situation. Can you believe this? One student chuckled. Jiang Chen has been the king of hard work since he got here, And for what? A useless class? Another student nodded. Meanwhile, school beauty Lin, the academy's second-ranked student, just awakened a secret combat class. Talk about a twist. Despite the ridicule surrounding him, Jiang Chen simply smiled. Just moments ago, those same students had treated him with admiration, yet now, they mocked him without hesitation. It was clear strength was all that mattered in this world. As he pondered the situation, he couldn't help but question why the creation class was looked down upon. Raising his hand, a system window suddenly appeared in front of him. A notification confirmed that he had successfully awakened his divine rank spiritual masterclass. But that wasn't all. His awakening had also triggered the activation of something unexpected, the natural calamity insect system, unlocking the initial mother of insects. Jiang Chen turned his head slightly, his gaze fixed on the system window, and a smirk crept across his face. This class was a perfect fit for him. His name was Jiang Chen. In his previous life, he had died, only to be reborn in this world, one where strength dictated everything. After the Dark Era ended, monsters and dungeons reshaped the world, and humanity had no choice but to respect power above all else. Born an orphan, Jiang Chen had struggled to survive, knowing he had nothing but his own determination to rely on. Then, a month ago, everything changed. Out of nowhere, a mysterious system window appeared before him, stating that the insect calamity system would merge with his class upon awakening. It promised great power, but only after a successful class transfer. Jiang Chen placed a hand on his chin as he analyzed the system window. The insect race, a species that had once brought humanity to the brink of destruction, was feared as one of the most powerful forces in history. It was said that during the last natural calamity, 9 of humanity's 12 kings had sacrificed themselves just to seal it away. His expression hardened as he clenched his fist. In this world, strength was everything. There was no room for hesitation. If he could harness the power of the insect race for himself, then instead of being humanity's greatest threat, they would become his greatest weapon. Without wasting another second, Jiang Chen activated the system. Instantly, his surroundings changed. He found himself in a strange space, blinking in confusion. Looking around, he raised a hand to shield his eyes as he tried to take in the unfamiliar environment. This place, was it his sea of consciousness? Before him stood an enormous spiritual tree, radiating an overwhelming presence. He hadn't expected his talent to manifest as a tree. More system windows popped up, revealing details about his abilities. Jiang Chen had multiple class talents, each tied to the evolution of all things and requiring sacrifices to activate. These abilities could be used once every 10 days and were limited to 1 use per target. The first talent, Fruits of All Things, allowed him to accelerate the growth of fruits through sacrifice. In return, a special fruit with unknown effects would randomly appear. The second talent, Improved Growth, increased the growth rate of all living beings by 10%. With this ability, Jiang Chen could enhance the speed of development for anything he chose. This talent had a cooldown of 8 hours. Jiang Chen placed a hand on his chin, deep in thought as he analyzed the system window. The system had even proactively assessed his talent, which was impressive. While his abilities didn't seem suited for direct combat, they could still be integrated into his system. Just as he was considering his options, a new system prompt appeared, asking if he would like to summon the mother insect. Without hesitation, Jiang Chen confirmed the summoning. Immediately, an ominous energy surged from the ground. A system notification flashed, informing him that the mother insect was being summoned. Jiang Chen watched as the sinister aura intensified, and he couldn't help but acknowledge its overwhelming presence. Seconds later, another system window appeared. Summoning complete. Natural calamity rank mother insect, 9 miasma wing, has been successfully summoned. Jiang Chen's eyes widened as the enormous creature took form. The mother of insects was a towering, monstrous being, its sheer size forcing him to instinctively take a few steps back. His system interface displayed her status. Name, 9 miasma wing. Title, Sovereign of Death. History, once a catastrophic calamity, she had brought destruction on the scale of a natural disaster before vanishing during the Third Era. Devouring value, 0%. Affinity with host, 100%. Jiang Chen quickly realized that in order to unlock her full abilities, he would need to begin the devouring process and start breeding the next generation of insects. As he stood there, still processing everything, the mother insect turned her piercing gaze toward him. To his surprise, instead of attacking, she lowered her head and addressed him as master. She introduced herself as Little Nine and immediately voiced her hunger, expressing a strong desire to devour fierce beasts to grow stronger. A system window popped up, confirming that her growth rate had increased by 10%, and Jiang Chen was given an opportunity to enhance her using a sacrificial object. However, thanks to his talent, the first enhancement wouldn't require a sacrifice. Raising his head slightly, Jiang Chen glanced at the system window. If he could enhance her immediately without using any resources, then there was no reason to hesitate. Without wasting a second, he commanded the system to begin the upgrade process. A radiant green light engulfed the mother insect's body, pulsating with intense energy. As Jiang Chen observed the transformation, he quickly realized something she needed to devour in order to grow stronger. This meant she would always be hungry, and keeping her satisfied wouldn't be easy. Suddenly, an immense aura erupted from her form, forcing Jiang Chen to instinctively take a defensive stance. Slowly, her grotesque insect body began to change, her limbs reshaping, her exoskeleton shifting. And then, in mere seconds, she was no longer a monstrous beast. The mother insect had evolved. Her new form was that of a white-haired woman clad in dark armor, exuding a terrifying presence. Her cold, piercing gaze locked onto Jiang Chen, and with slow, deliberate steps, she began advancing toward him. Above her head, a system window appeared, revealing her new abilities. 1. Feed. Allows her to share 10x experience with the host. 2. Poisonous Mist. Grants her the ability to transform into deadly miasma, corroding everything in her path. 3. United. Enhances all of the host's abilities by 20%. Jiang Chen stared in disbelief at the newly evolved mother insect. Her transformation had been drastic, but before he could fully process it, she suddenly lunged forward and wrapped him in a tight hug. Beaming with excitement, she announced that Little Nine had evolved. Jiang Chen blinked, momentarily stunned. He wasn't sure how to react. As he glanced at her, now in human form, he couldn't help but blush slightly. This was not what he had expected. Sensing his confusion, Little Nine finally let go and looked up at him, her expression filled with admiration. Without thinking, Jiang Chen reached out and gently patted her head. She closed her eyes, clenched her fists with excitement, and once again referred to him as master. With a small, almost playful smile, she eagerly declared her hunger for flesh and blood. As Jiang Chen absent-mindedly stroked her head, a status window appeared above her. Name: 9 Miasma Wing. Abilities: Poisonous Mist, Feed, Fury, and Unity. Devouring value: 0%, needs to be filled before she can start producing offspring. Passive abilities: Experience Return, Attribute Enhancement. Jiang Chen's gaze sharpened as he analyzed the interface. His spiritual master talent could accelerate Little Nine's devouring growth and experience gain, which in turn would make him stronger at an incredible rate. Not only that, but her passive ability boosted all of his attributes by 20%. His class and the insect calamity system were a perfect combination. A smirk crossed Jiang Chen's face. Who needed a combat class when he had this? Raising his hands, he activated his abilities. Instantly, countless insects began crawling out from his palms, skittering forward in droves. Watching them move, Jiang Chen felt a rush of excitement. As long as he could devour and grow quickly, he would soon command an unstoppable army. He then turned his attention toward the great spiritual tree. The system had referred to the insects of the abyss as a catastrophe on par with a natural calamity. Though the details remained unclear, one thing was certain: this was not something that could be revealed to the world. If anyone found out, he would instantly be seen as a threat to humanity. Jiang Chen stuffed his hands into his pockets and stared at the spiritual tree in deep thought. For now, he decided it was best to hide his true abilities. He would use his creation class identity as a cover, while secretly using Little Nine's poisonous miasma and devouring abilities to hunt monsters and grow stronger. However, hiding forever wasn't his style. One day, he would become so powerful that he wouldn't need to hide anything. Before he could think further, the waters of his sea of consciousness suddenly began to ripple. Sensing danger, Little Nine instantly leapt into the air, wings spread wide. She scanned the surroundings, then turned back toward Jiang Chen with a mischievous grin. Her golden eyes gleamed with anticipation. She could sense it. A threat was near. A moment later, Jiang Chen snapped back to reality and exited the system space. The moment he returned to the real world, his breath hitched. Standing in front of him was a man, much taller than him. He had jet black hair, a rugged beard, and a long scar over one eye. His powerful presence was suffocating. Slowly, the man stepped forward, locking eyes with Jiang Chen, his piercing gaze cold and unreadable. Jiang Chen's instincts screamed at him. This man was dangerous. For several seconds, the towering man remained silent, his gaze locked onto Jiang Chen. Then, in a calm but firm voice, he finally spoke. Was the awakening phenomenon that the entire city had witnessed caused by him? Jiang Chen clenched his teeth. He could tell immediately this man was at least master rank, if not higher. His presence alone was suffocating. Instinctively, Jiang Chen became alert, trying to figure out why he was being approached. Meanwhile, the crowd around them had started paying attention. Even though the man stood at a distance, his sheer aura was palpable, radiating with a powerful green energy. Whispers spread among the onlookers as they speculated about his rank. Why was someone so strong speaking to Jiang Chun? Was there some kind of conflict? The man remained silent, his gaze unwavering, pressuring Jiang Chun without a single word. The intensity of his stare made Jiang Chun uneasy. Was he testing him? Just then, Little Nine appeared, casually licking her finger. The moment she laid eyes on the man, her expression darkened. She leaned in close to Jiang Chun and, with a voice dripping in murderous intent, declared that this man was a threat. To her, he looked delicious. Jiang Chun's heart pounded. Something was very wrong. His system immediately reacted, flashing multiple warning windows. The insect mother had identified a high-value target for devouring. Before Jiang Chun could process what was happening, Little Nine prepared to attack. Suddenly, Jiang Chun's aura exploded outward, spreading in all directions. The sheer force of it sent a chilling wave through the area, reaching the same students who had mocked him earlier. They instinctively shielded their faces, their expressions shifting from amusement to fear. Why does Jiang Chun's aura feel so cold and sinister? One student stammered. Jiang Chun clenched his fists, his expression darkening. He had just realized a critical flaw. When the insect mother's devouring value was low, her aggressiveness increased. If he didn't find monsters for her to consume soon, she would start targeting people. Meanwhile, the man in front of him did not look intimidated. Instead, he simply smiled. Jiang Chun immediately understood. This guy was testing him. But in the process, he had accidentally triggered Little Nine's instincts. The situation was dangerous, but thankfully, Jiang Chun was still able to suppress her. With a deep breath, he forcefully calmed the insect mother, and a system notification confirmed her temporary suppression. However, this was only a short-term solution. If he didn't begin devouring and breeding soon, this would keep happening. The man, hands tucked casually into his jacket pockets, studied Jiang Chun with keen interest. Then, with a nod of approval, he congratulated him. Despite just finishing his awakening, Jiang Chun had already managed to face his test and even fight back. That was impressive. You truly are worthy of a divine awakening, the man said. Your future is limitless. Jiang Chun remained silent, carefully processing every word. He felt relieved. The man hadn't discovered his true abilities. Taking a cautious step forward, Jiang Chun met the man's gaze and finally asked, "Who are you?" The man's smile widened. He extended a hand and introduced himself, Ji Gang, leader of the Night Watch. With a glint of admiration in his eyes, he then made an offer. "Jiang Chun, how about joining us?" Jiang Chun's eyes widened in surprise. He hadn't expected Ji Gang to be part of the Night Watch. The Night Watch was a special task force under Long Xia, responsible for resisting demon invasions and beast hordes. Whenever a beast tide struck, or a new dungeon or secret realm appeared, they were the first to investigate or eliminate the threat entirely. However, being on the front lines came with a price. The mortality rate among Night Watch members was alarmingly high, which was why most people avoided joining. But for Jiang Chun, this was an opportunity. The insect mother needed a constant supply of monster flesh and blood to accumulate devouring value and begin reproducing. Once that process started, no one knew how much chaos it would cause. A wild, monster-infested battlefield was the perfect breeding ground. As Jiang Chun stared at Ji Gang's outstretched hand, a small smile formed on his lips. The Night Watch was the perfect cover for him. Meanwhile, the students watching from afar whispered among themselves. "Is he crazy? No one volunteers for the Night Watch." One of them muttered. "The death rate is insane," another agreed. "There's no way he'll actually join." Ji Gang overheard their murmurs and let out a forced smile. Hoping to persuade Jiang Chun, he assured him that the rumors were outdated. Things had changed, and to sweeten the deal, he offered Jiang Chun comprehensive training and exclusive resources, privileges granted only to divine rank awakeners. Without hesitation, Jiang Chun grasped Ji Gang's hand and firmly called him leader. There was no need for further discussion. Looking directly into Ji Gang's eyes, Jiang Chun spoke with conviction. "To restore the glory of the Night Watch, our generation must not shy away from its duty." With that, he officially agreed to join. Ji Gang blinked, momentarily stunned. He hadn't expected such an easy acceptance. What he didn't know was that Jiang Chun had his own reasons. He intended to use the Night Watch to breed his insect army. Still, Ji Gang couldn't help but ask, "Are you serious?" Before Jiang Chun could answer, a system notification popped up. Then another, and another. The insect mother had appeared, and she was furious. Her golden eyes burned with rage as she stomped toward Jiang Chun. "Master, I am not happy about this," she declared, crossing her arms. She shot a murderous glare at Ji Gang. "I wanted to eat him." Jiang Chun internally panicked. Suppressing a sigh, he closed his eyes for a moment, then turned back to Ji Gang. "Yes," he reaffirmed. "I meant what I said. Before Ji Gang could question him further, Jiang Chen quickly excused himself, claiming he had an urgent matter to attend to. As he walked away, he glanced over his shoulder, giving Ji Gang a casual wave. In 3 days, I'll report to Night Watch headquarters. Don't be late, leader. Ji Gang watched Jiang Chen disappear into the distance, standing there in silence. This was too easy. He had expected negotiations, hesitation, maybe even some resistance. But Jiang Chen had agreed immediately. Something didn't add up. And then before Ji Gang could think further, 2 figures suddenly descended from the sky, landing beside him. One of them was a high-ranking elder from the martial arts academy. Ji Gang turned his head, his expression unreadable. If you're here to steal talent from the Night Watch, he said, his tone flat, then you're already too late. The 8th elder ignored his remark and got straight to the point. Where is the boy who awakened a divine rank creation class? Ji Gang furrowed his brow, clearly confused. He turned to the 8th elder and asked what he was talking about. The old man took a step closer, locking eyes with Ji Gang. His expression carried a mix of shock and disbelief. You're seriously planning to let a divine rank creation class awakener join the Night Watch? The elder scoffed. You're just sending him to his death. Ji Gang's eyes narrowed. Divine rank creation class? It suddenly clicked. Jiang Chen had awakened a divine rank creation class. At the same time, elsewhere in the city, Jiang Chen made his way through the streets when an older man named Wang Yi spotted him. Kid, were you the one who caused that phenomenon in the main city? Wang Yi asked, his voice carrying a mix of excitement and curiosity. Jiang Chen simply nodded. Yeah. Before Wang Yi could say anything else, a young woman with purple hair approached. She placed a hand on her waist and sighed. Lower your voice, old man, she warned. If the wrong person hears, you might bring trouble down on yourself. Wang Yi chuckled, rubbing the back of his head. Ah, don't mind her. I just talked too much. Jiang Chen closed his eyes briefly, then smiled. It's fine, Wang Yi. There's nothing to be embarrassed about. Wang Yi studied him for a moment before letting out a small sigh. Well, even if the creation class can't fight, I've heard that companies are always looking for people to cultivate spiritual plants. If your parents were here, they'd be so proud of you. Jiang Chen's expression softened. Over the years, the people in this building had helped him survive. With a sincere smile, he reassured them, I won't forget you all in the future. Wang Yi waved him off. Don't sweat the small stuff, kid. Then, his eyes lit up as if he had just remembered something. Actually, you came at the right time. We're about to head into a beginner-level secret realm to pick up some gear. Why don't you join us? You'll level up faster. Jiang Chen nodded. Sounds good. I appreciate the invite. Just then, a system notification popped up, confirming that the team formation was complete. Minutes later, inside the secret realm, Jiang Chen and the others stepped through the portal, entering the secret realm. With his hands in his jacket pockets, Jiang Chen glanced around, taking in his surroundings. Was this really the interior of a secret realm? Before he could process it further, torches around the area suddenly ignited, signaling that the matchmaking process was complete. At that moment, the monsters inside the dungeon turned toward them. The Temple of the Dead, a C-rank secret realm, was now officially open. A system notification appeared. Guaranteed 100% drop rate for items and equipment. Experience points will be calculated upon dungeon completion. Leaving voluntarily means forfeiting both experience and loot. Wang Yi's expression tensed as he examined the enemies ahead. These are undead soldiers. A bead of sweat rolled down his forehead as realization hit him. Wait, why did the secret realm system match us with this level of dungeon? Jiang Chen scanned the horde of undead soldiers and quickly understood. This wasn't going to be easy. The purple-haired girl stepped forward, crossing her arms. It's because Jiang Chen is a divine rank awakener, she explained. The celestial system automatically adjusted the difficulty. Wang Yi turned slightly toward her, raising an eyebrow. Did you forget? Jiang Chen awakened in the creation category. The brown-haired girl stepped forward as well, her gaze locked on the undead soldiers ahead. Shouldn't we just abandon the dungeon? She suggested cautiously. Before she could finish her sentence, Wang Yi cut her off. He unsheathed his sword, a glint of excitement in his eyes. There's no need to run. We don't come across secret realms of this level every day. Then, with a smirk, he added, besides, thanks to Jiang Chen, we're about to hit the jackpot with equipment drops. The moment Wang Yi unsheathed his sword, the undead soldiers roared in fury. Their hollow eyes flickered with eerie light as they prepared to strike. Wang Yi, however, was unfazed. Gathering momentum, he lunged forward and called out to Jiang Chen. These undead are stronger than your average C-rank monsters. Stay back for now. With that, he and the others rushed toward the core of the dungeon. Wang Yi's sword swung down in a brutal arc, landing a direct hit on the skull of one of the undead soldiers. The impact sent cracks rippling through the creature's decayed armor. Without missing a beat, he turned his head and called out, Luing, boost me now. In response, Lu Ying clasped her hands together, activating her ability. A faint golden glow surrounded Wang Yi as his talent was enhanced. With his strength amplified, he delivered a final blow, completely shattering the undead soldier's skull. The monster collapsed lifeless. While Wang Yi and the others fought fiercely, Jiang Qun simply stood at a distance, observing. He watched as they risked their lives against monsters every single day, all just to survive. It suddenly made sense why they always returned covered in wounds. His gaze flickered toward Lu Ying. He had heard that she became an adventurer to earn enough money to heal her brother's eyesight. Jiang Qun clenched his fists. He needed to grow stronger quickly. Once he had the means, he would properly repay those who had helped him. Lost in thought, he didn't immediately notice that little Nine had materialized beside him. With her hand under her chin, she studied the fallen undead soldier's corpse. Master, there's so much blood and flesh here, she murmured, her voice filled with hunger. I want to devour them. Jiang Qun, still calm and composed, slid his hands into his pockets and turned toward the undead corpse. A small smirk tugged at the corner of his lips. Little Nine had already detected the bodies. Given the situation, Jiang Qun decided it was time to test her abilities. Extending his hand to the side, he activated the level 1 poison barrier skill, Corrosion. A thick, dark green fog swirled in his palm, pulsating with deadly energy. Go ahead, Jiang Qun commanded. Little Nine's eyes gleamed, and she let out a pleased hum. The poisonous fog surged forward, creeping toward the undead corpses. The moment the mist made contact, the bodies began to corrode at an alarming rate. Within seconds, the decayed flesh melted away, leaving behind nothing but a blackened stain on the dungeon floor. Jiang Qun narrowed his eyes. The skill was far more potent than he expected. A system notification popped up. Devouring successful. Devouring value plus 10. But there was a downside. Since the undead were low-level monsters, the growth rate was painfully slow. Little Nine needed to consume stronger prey. Jiang Qun glanced back at Wang Yi and his group. They had already pushed deeper into the dungeon, their teamwork seamless, a sign of partners who had fought together for years. His only concern was his poison mist. Since it was an area of effectability, he still couldn't control it properly. If he wasn't careful, he could accidentally injure his own allies. To avoid any collateral damage, Jiang Qun decided to follow from behind and quietly dispose of the fallen monster corpses. But then, Little Nine tensed. Her expression shifted. She suddenly turned to Jiang Qun and whispered, Master, I sense something. Jiang Qun followed her gaze. The ground began to tremble. A chilling presence spread through the air as dark silhouettes emerged from the shadows. More monsters were appearing. Little Nine's lips curled into a hungry grin. They're fresh, she purred, and their blood smells delicious. A system notification appeared. New enemy identified. Level 10 Shadow Lurkers. Strength, 20. Agility, 15. Defense, 10. Stamina, 5. These creatures were specialized in ambushing their prey. Hiding in the darkness, they targeted the weakest stragglers. As Jiang Qun locked eyes with the Shadow Lurkers, he noticed that their names were displayed in red. He wondered, was it because their level was much higher than his? However, when it came to raw attributes, these monsters were far inferior to him. A status window appeared before him. Name, Jiang Qun. Title, Lord of Insects. Occupation, Divine Rank Spiritual Master. Devouring Value, Level 1. Talents, O Growth of All Things, LV.1. O Divine Evolution, LV.1. O Ancestral Tree of All Things, LV.1. Equipment, none. Companion, 9 Miasma Wing, Natural Calamity Level. Stats, O Strength, 35. O Agility, 31. O Endurance, 27. O Constitution, 20. O Combat Power, 41 stars. Abilities, O Experience Return, Passive. O Attribute Enhancement, Passive. Current Devouring Value, 100. Current Experience, 0. Jiang Qun smirked. It was time to test his abilities. Turning slightly, he gave Little Nine a simple command. Transform into poisonous mist and follow me. Without hesitation, she obeyed. Her body dissolved into a thick, eerie fog, slithering along the ground like a living entity. At that moment, the Shadow Lurkers lunged. Jiang Qun barely moved. His expression remained calm as he brought his hand up, allowing Little Nine's poisonous mist to swirl around his palm. He was waiting. The moment the monsters got close, he dashed forward. The Shadow Lurkers struck first, but he effortlessly dodged, weaving through their attacks with precision. As he moved, he brushed his hand against their bodies. A second later, the monsters froze in confusion. They turned their heads, looking at the spots where Jiang Qun had touched them. The poisonous mist had already started spreading. Jiang Qun paused, smirking. Then, he slowly extended his hand toward them. and with a single deliberate motion, he clenched his fist. The poisonous mist around the monsters thickened in an instant, sinking deep into their bodies. They screeched in agony as their flesh began to corrode. Their forms withered away, melting into nothingness. Jiang Chun didn't react. He simply turned his head slightly, watching in silence as the mist consumed them. A series of system notifications popped up. Shadow Lurker defeated. Special points plus 200. Devouring value increased. Jiang Chun glanced at the pile of corpses and chuckled. They were no match for me. His devouring value was increasing rapidly, far faster than before. This was exactly what he needed. Just as he was lost in thought, Little Nine reappeared, materializing from the mist. Her golden eyes gleamed. Master, she purred, more blood food has appeared. Jiang Chun turned, his smirk fading. From the darkness, more shadow lurkers emerged. He stood still, hands in his pockets, unmoving. His gaze darkened as he studied the approaching creatures. But then a thought struck him. Wang Yi and the others. His eyes narrowed. If there were this many hidden monsters here, how many more were lurking deeper in the dungeon? A sliver of concern crept into his mind. He needed to check on them. Without hesitation, he decided to finish off these monsters quickly. Little Nine, he called out, can you handle them? In response, Little Nine grinned. Slowly, she began to manifest herself from the poisonous mist, her figure taking shape once more. Extending a hand toward the approaching monsters, her voice was filled with pure amusement. Leave them to me, master. These creatures are nothing but small prey. Several minutes later, Jiang Chun arrived at Wang Yi's location. The moment he laid eyes on the scene, his expression darkened. Wang Yi was badly injured, blood dripping onto his face. He and Lu Ying were completely surrounded by monsters. Wang Yi stood firm, gripping his sword with both hands, while Lu Ying had both arms raised, ready to activate her ability. But the monsters weren't giving them a break. They continued advancing, their numbers overwhelming. Gritting his teeth, Wang Yi stared at the approaching monsters. They're getting stronger, he muttered. At this rate, there's no way we're getting out alive. He then turned to Lu Ying, his expression grave. Find Jiang Chun and get out of here. I'll hold them off. Lu Ying's eyes widened in shock. What are you saying? She protested. Before he could respond, a sudden movement caught his attention. An undead soldier had broken through their defenses. Its rusted sword gleamed, slicing through the air as it lunged straight for Wang Yi's head. Wang Yi sensed it immediately, but it was too fast. As he whipped around, his heart clenched. It was too late to block. But just before the attack landed, a dense, dark mist erupted. The poisonous fog wrapped around the undead soldier, corroding its body in an instant. The monster let out a ghastly screech, its form melting away as if swallowed by an unseen force. Wang Yi's breath hitched. He spun around stunned. And there, standing before him, was Jiang Chun. Are you two okay? Jiang Chun asked, his tone calm. Wang Yi's eyes widened in disbelief. Jiang Chun, he muttered. Jiang Chun stepped forward, unfazed. With a flick of his wrist, he commanded Little Nine's mist to spread further. The remaining undead soldiers barely had time to react before the corrosive mist engulfed them all. Their decaying bodies dissolved, disintegrating into nothingness. Silence fell. Wang Yi gripped his sword tightly, his face a mix of shock and confusion. How? His voice was barely above a whisper. You're an awakener from the creation class. How can you do this? Jiang Chun stopped in front of him. His body pulsed with energy as he turned his gaze toward Wang Yi and gave a knowing smile. I have a hidden ability called Poisonous Mist. To demonstrate, he extended his hand once more. A thick, lethal fog coiled around his palm before rushing out, consuming the remaining undead in its path. But Jiang Chun wasn't done yet. He turned toward Lu Ying and Yi Qian. Take Wang Yi and head to the portal. He's too injured to keep fighting. I'll stay behind and cover you. The entire group froze. Lu Ying's eyes widened in shock. Wang Yi's jaw tightened. Even if you have a divine class, this is too dangerous. Jiang Chun. Wang Yi snapped. Lu Ying nodded in agreement. You should come with us, not stay behind to fight alone. As they pleaded with him, Yi Qian simply pressed a hand near her mouth, remaining silent. Jiang Chun turned his back on them. His aura surged, waves of power rippling around him. Then, without turning fully, he glanced over his shoulder. Don't worry, he said smoothly. I'll be fine. And with that, he walked forward alone. His body radiated power, his energy intensifying as he approached the oncoming monsters. Just then, a system notification echoed through the secret realm. Alert! The final level conditions have been met. The boss of the secret realm is now being summoned. Wang Yi's eyes widened. At the same time, he watched as Jiang Chun moved further away, advancing toward the horde of undead soldiers. His instinct screamed at him to stop the boy, but just as he opened his mouth, Lu Ying cut him off. She turned to him, her expression calm yet firm. Jiang Chun isn't reckless, she reminded him. Trust him? Wang Yi hesitated, but after a moment of deep thought, he sighed and made his decision. With a flick of his wrist, he tossed his sword toward Jiang Chun. Take this, Wang Yi said, but don't forget to return it later. Jiang Chun effortlessly caught the weapon, gripping it firmly. With a smirk, he nodded. Don't worry, he replied. I'll bring it back. A system notification appeared. You have obtained the Novice Conqueror's Sword. Plus 25 speed. Plus 30 strength. Plus 2% attack speed bonus. Passive ability activated. Jiang Chun lifted the sword, studying its gleaming edge. This was perfect. With a blade in hand, he could extend the range of his poisonous mist. As the undead soldiers lunged toward him, Jiang Chun activated the mist, allowing the toxic fog to coil around the blade. The moment the first monster attacked, he dodged with ease, then countered. In a blink, his sword sliced through them, leaving their bodies corroding in blackened mist. One by one, the undead fell, disintegrating into nothing. They were no match for him. After all, Jiang Chun was the best swordsman in the entire school. But then, something changed. A powerful presence surged through the battlefield. Before Jiang Chun could react, a much stronger monster appeared, rushing toward him at high speed. Its blade gleamed as it closed in. Jiang Chun hadn't sensed the attack at first, but as he turned his head, his instincts flared. The monster was already too close. Thinking fast, Jiang Chun leapt into the air, dodging just in time. The monster's blade struck the ground with explosive force, shattering the earth beneath it. Jiang Chun landed safely, but the enemy wasn't done. With burning red eyes, the monster locked onto him, gripping its sword even tighter. Then, in a split second, it attacked again. Jiang Chun barely managed to block in time, but the sheer force of the impact sent a shockwave through his arms. A sickening crack echoed through the battlefield. Jiang Chun's eyes widened in horror. The Novice Conqueror's sword had snapped in half. The sheer difference in strength was staggering. Jiang Chun was sent flying backward, but he quickly twisted his body midair and landed, skidding to a stop. His grip tightened as he glanced at the broken blade in his hands. He wasn't worried about the boss. He was more worried about how to explain this to Wang Yi. Then, another system notification appeared. Boss monster. Undead King, level 15. Jiang Chun slowly lifted his gaze. Standing before him was the Undead King. A towering figure. Its skeletal frame was clad in dark armor, its grip firm around its massive sword. The boss locked eyes with Jiang Chun, radiating killing intent. Then, its body vibrated. In the blink of an eye, it vanished. Jiang Chun's heart pounded. Where did it? Before he could react, a chilling aura appeared behind him. His instincts screamed in warning. Jiang Chun whipped around, and his eyes went wide with shock. The Undead King was right behind him. Sword raised. Attack incoming. For the first time, Jiang Chun felt a flicker of fear. How, he muttered. How did it move so fast? His body tensed. His mind raced. Then, with gritted teeth and a fierce glare, he shouted one name. Little Nine! Just as the Undead King's sword was about to strike Jiang Chun, Little Nine appeared. With one swift motion, she caught the blade in her bare hand. Her golden eyes locked onto the Undead King, unblinking. A dangerous glint flickered across her face as she turned to Jiang Chun. Master, can I eliminate him? She asked, almost too eagerly. Jiang Chun didn't hesitate. Do it. Upon hearing his approval, Little Nine grinned. Then, without even flinching, she shattered the Undead King's sword with her bare hand. A massive shockwave rippled through the battlefield. Little Nine extended her arms to the sides, her body radiating an overwhelming aura that surged in all directions. Sensing the danger, the Undead King tensed. Now that it had lost its weapon, it had no choice but to fight with its fists. Taking advantage of Little Nine's momentary distraction, the Undead King lunged forward at full speed, aiming to strike her down. But just as its attack was about to land, Little Nine's eyes snapped open. Her entire presence shifted. Her murderous intent flooded the battlefield. With razor-sharp tentacles bursting from her back, she instantly switched to an offensive stance. The Undead King never stood a chance. Her tentacles lashed out like swords, striking with deadly precision. First, she severed its left arm, then its right arm. Finally, she decapitated it in one clean strike. With one final motion, she impaled the Undead King's severed head on a tentacle. Then, without a second glance, she turned her back to it. Behind her, the headless body collapsed to the ground. Silence. Jiang Chun stood there, watching in awe. Little Nine, in front of a secret realm boss, had remained completely calm. He couldn't help but smile. At this point, he was certain she was an absolute monster. Just as he was about to relax, a bright energy crystal materialized in front of him. Jiang Chun narrowed his eyes. What is this? The crystal floated upward, and suddenly, it began absorbing magic from the corpses scattered across the battlefield. Jiang Chen's eyes widened. Seconds later, the crystal pulsed violently. A massive, towering figure materialized. It was 20 times bigger than both Jiang Chen and Little Nine. A system notification flashed. True boss identified. Undead Tyrant. The undead tyrant slowly lifted its head, its glowing red eyes locking onto Jiang Chen and Little Nine. Its sheer presence sent a chilling wave through the air. Jiang Chen clenched his fists. This was the real boss, all along? Realizing the crystal was the key, Jiang Chen gritted his teeth and shouted, "Little Nine, destroy the energy crystal inside it." But before she could move, the undead tyrant let out an earth-shaking roar. Then it swung its massive mace downward. The attack was aimed directly at Little Nine. Yet, in the blink of an eye, she vanished. Using the momentum from the attack, she launched herself off the wall, dodging effortlessly. The undead tyrant's mace slammed into the ground, shattering it into countless pieces. Jiang Chen watched as the colossal beast raised its weapon again. It struck once more, aiming for Little Nine. But she leapt into the air, dodging again with perfect timing. The ground split apart from the sheer force of the blow. Still airborne, Little Nine's expression turned cold. With a murderous gleam in her eyes, she extended her tentacles forward. Sharp as blades, they shot toward the undead tyrant, aiming to tear through its massive body. But it dodged, effortlessly. Jiang Chen's breath hitched. This thing is massive, yet somehow, it was moving at impossible speeds. Jiang Chen narrowed his eyes. Jiang Chen gritted his teeth, his mind racing for a plan. His eyes darted to the ground, where several plants lay among the debris. A chance. This was his only shot. The undead tyrant was too fast, its attacks devastating. Every swing of its mace carried enough force to shatter the earth. Right now, it was like a raging bull completely out of control. But that also meant it had a weakness. Little Nine lashed out with her razor-sharp tentacles, but the undead tyrant spun at high speed, effortlessly dodging her attacks. Then, using the momentum, the colossal beast charged forward, its massive form barreling toward Jiang Chen. Jiang Chen's heart pounded. It was coming too fast, and then it leapt. Jiang Chen's head snapped up, eyes locked onto the airborne monster. His instinct screamed this was bad, but then he sensed it. Beneath the battlefield, hidden roots lay dormant in the soil. This was it. The undead tyrant clutched its mace in both hands, its descent toward Jiang Chen unavoidable. Jiang Chen remained calm. He waited, just a little closer, closer, and then, now, Jiang Chen thrust his hand toward the ground. A glowing green symbol flared in his palm as he activated his spiritual master talent. In an instant, the hidden spiritual roots surged from the earth. From massive roots shot upward, piercing straight through the undead tyrant's body, trapping it midair. The monster let out a deafening roar, struggling violently. But it was too late. It was immobilized. Jiang Chen, his hand still raised, radiated pure dominance. His aura flared, his eyes burning with calculated fury. Then, without turning, he spoke. "Little Nine, it's your turn." In the blink of an eye, Little Nine moved. She landed on the undead tyrant's head, one hand pressing down firmly. With her other hand, she extended her claws, their edges gleaming menacingly. Her eyes locked onto the helpless creature, filled with murderous intent. "Understood, Master." The undead tyrant's eyes widened. It realized what was coming. Panic flickered across its twisted face. It struggled, trying desperately to break free. But it was in vain. Before it could react, Little Nine attacked. With a feral grin, she drove her claws deep into the undead tyrant's chest. Then, with a flick of her tentacles, she tore its body clean in half. The spiritual roots shattered, their purpose fulfilled. The undead tyrant's remains plummeted to the ground. Jiang Chen, his hands still extended, exhaled slowly. He gazed at the fallen boss, and for the first time he felt proud. He had done it. This battle had proven something crucial. His abilities were more than just support. If he used them correctly, he could dominate any battlefield. Just as he was lost in thought, a system notification appeared. Growth acceleration is now on cooldown for 8 hours. The spiritual roots slowly faded away, sinking back into the earth. And then, a core emerged from the undead tyrant's corpse. Jiang Chen's gaze sharpened. Without hesitation, he lunged forward. Before the core could escape, he snatched it in his grasp. With a tightened fist, he crushed it into dust. As the fragments scattered to the ground, Jiang Chen stared at his hand, his eyes cold and resolute. This battle was over. As soon as the battle ended, a series of system notifications popped up. "Congratulations! You have cleared the C-rank secret realm, Temple of the Undead." The system then began calculating individual contributions. A few seconds later, the final secret realm rankings were generated. Jiang Chun, level 0, spiritual master, S rank. Wang Yi, level 12, swordsman, B rank. Lu Ying, level 11, warlock, A rank. And Lin, level 10, boxer, B rank. Following this, the heavenly system started generating team rewards. A glowing reward window appeared in front of Jiang Chun, displaying his options. A few moments later, the system finalized the team rewards, and the window expanded. Jiang Chun could now choose from several weapons. 1. Dagger. 2. Scepter. 3. Heavy axe. 4. Light axe. 5. Hammer. As the spiritual roots slowly sank back into the ground, Jiang Chun studied the system window, lost in thought. After a few seconds, he reached inside and selected the dagger. A system notification popped up. You have obtained Edmu's Swift Dagger, rank D. Plus 50 attack points. Plus 5% speed bonus. Bonus. 2 professional attributes related to swords. Jiang Chun examined the dagger's blade, testing its sharpness. Not bad. This would make a decent replacement for Wang Yi's broken sword. However, his eyes flicked back to the system window. There was still a lot of equipment left. He quickly realized something. All of it was geared towards combat. He frowned slightly. Wasn't there anything suitable for creation class awakeners? Curious, he reached back into the system window and decided to check the stats of each weapon. His gaze landed on the hammer. The moment he pulled it out, it slammed into the ground with a loud thud. It was unbelievably heavy. A system notification appeared. You have obtained Call of the King, Legendary Hammer. Plus 100 strength, minus 100 agility, due to extreme weight. Effect, 10% chance to trigger 5x critical damage. Jiang Chun tried to lift it, but even with both hands, it barely budged. Just then, a new system notification flashed before him. Experience rewards calculated. Distributing earned experience. Jiang Chun's eyes widened. The system was now rewarding him with the experience points from the secret realm. As the experience flowed into his body, something changed. The once heavy hammer felt lighter and lighter, until in just a few seconds, he was able to lift it effortlessly. Another system notification appeared. United ability activated. All attributes increased by 20%. A surge of powerful energy enveloped Jiang Chun's body. With one hand, he easily held the massive hammer, while his other hand casually slipped into his pocket. He turned his gaze toward the hammer, studying its new weight in his grip. Under Little Nine's passive ability, his level had skyrocketed to level 6. With that, the effects of United became even stronger. Not only had his overall attributes increased, but he now realized that his physical combat ability was rising alongside his level. As Jiang Chun stood lost in thought, Little Nine tugged at his shirt, snapping him out of his trance. She pointed at the system window, eyes gleaming with curiosity, and asked if she could eat everything inside. Setting his hammer down, Jiang Chun met her gaze and pondered for a moment before shaking his head. He explained that the equipment was meant for Wang Yi and the others to exchange for money. If she ate it, she'd end up with a terrible stomachache. Hearing this, Little Nine pouted, placing one hand behind her back while touching her lips with the other. Her disappointment was short-lived, though, as she turned her attention toward the massive corpse of the undead tyrant. With hopeful eyes, she asked if she could devour that instead. Jiang Chun had completely forgotten about the boss's remains. The devouring value was too precious to waste. His powerful aura flared slightly as he turned to look at the towering corpse before giving Little Nine the go-ahead. It belonged to her, after all. Wasting no time, she approached the monstrous body. Jiang Chun couldn't help but wonder if this thing was a bit too big. If she used her poisonous mist to break it down, it might take a while. Then, without warning, Little Nine stretched out her arms, closed her eyes, and muttered something about digging. Her body trembled for a moment before she reverted to her natural form. Now, in her true state, she fixed the undead tyrant's remains with a predatory glare, opened her maw, and lunged forward. Despite the tyrant's colossal size, it was nothing compared to the sheer scale of her true form. Seeing this, Jiang Chun felt a chill run down his spine. With a deafening roar, Little Nine sank her fangs into the corpse, devouring it at an alarming pace. The force of her feeding created powerful gusts of wind, sending debris flying. Jiang Chun took advantage of the chaos to quickly remove all the equipment from the system window. Holding his hammer in one hand, he shielded his face with the other. Her roar was deafening. If they had been in the main city instead of this secret realm, there would have been no hiding from the commotion. As the last remnants of the undead tyrant disappeared, a system notification appeared, rewarding Jiang Chun with 400 devouring points. Peeking out from behind his arm, he noticed the devouring value was skyrocketing. As expected, boss-level creatures provided a huge boost. They needed more of these monsters if they wanted to push it even further. But before he could think too much about it, the sound of footsteps snapped him back to reality. His expression tensed. Wang Yi and the others were heading their way, drawn by the ruckus Little Nine had caused. The devouring value was now at 8,876 points, so close to being filled. Rushing over to Little Nine, he urged her to revert to her other form immediately. Grinning playfully, she nodded. Understood, master. Jiang Chen sighed. What a pity. If only they had a little more time. A few seconds later, Wang Yi and the others arrived. Their eyes immediately fell on the scattered equipment, confirming that Jiang Chen had indeed cleared the level. Jiang Chen explained that his sword had broken during the fight, but to make up for it, he handed Wang Yi a dagger. Without hesitation, Wang Yi took it. The moment he realized it was a rare item, he waved off the issue of the damaged sword. This was more than a fair trade. Meanwhile, Luing examined a necklace among the loot and pointed out that it was also a rare item, something that could fetch a high price. Yi Qian, on the other hand, was still in shock. She demanded to know how Jiang Chen had managed to take down the boss all on his own. Scratching the back of his head, Jiang Chen gave a casual response. His poison seemed to work particularly well against monsters like this. But as he spoke, his expression turned serious. The secret realm was now fully cleared, meaning it wouldn't refresh again. If he wanted to continue increasing his devouring value, he'd need to hunt down another boss. With that in mind, the desert seemed like his next destination. Wang Yi studied Jiang Chen for a moment before sighing. It was a shame that he was heading toward the research department. Someone with his talent, who could defeat a boss monster despite not even reaching level 1 yet, would become incredibly powerful once he started leveling up. Curious about his next move, Wang Yi asked about his plans. Jiang Chen turned to him with a smile and admitted he hadn't mentioned it before to avoid worrying him, but he was preparing to join the Night's Watch. This revelation stunned Wang Yi. He immediately questioned if Jiang Chen was serious about enlisting in the Night Watch. Jiang Chen simply placed a hand on his head and confirmed it. He would be leaving in 3 days. But before that, he wanted to increase his level, so he planned to head into the wilderness soon. The response shocked everyone. Yi Qian covered her mouth in disbelief, and Luing reached out, her expression stern. She warned him that the wilderness was incredibly dangerous, but before she could finish, Jiang Chen cut her off. Clenching his fist, he let a trace of Little Nine's poisonous mist seep through his palm. His voice was calm, but firm. He knew what he was doing. Instead of worrying about him, they should be worrying about the real threat, the monsters out there. Later that day, a few hours after their conversation, Jiang Chen boarded a train heading toward the outskirts of the city. As it slowed to a stop, the conductor announced that those heading into the wilderness should disembark. Jiang Chen stepped off the train, now wearing a cloak to avoid drawing attention. He scanned his surroundings and stood still for a few moments. In front of him, a bridge was packed with awakeners, all preparing for their journeys. Ever since awakening his system, his appetite had grown significantly. But what was even stranger was that despite the instability of his devouring value, he noticed a small increase, just from eating. Pulling out a loaf of bread, he took a bite, and sure enough, his devouring value ticked up by 2 points. At that moment, Little Nine materialized beside him. She put a hand near her mouth and grimaced at the sight of the bread. With an unimpressed look, she informed Jiang Chen that his food didn't look tasty at all. Hearing Little Nine's complaint, Jiang Chen decided to find something better for her to eat. He reached out and summoned a map, opening it with Little Nine by his side. He hadn't expected Wang Yi to be so generous. Aside from most of the equipment, he had also given Jiang Chen an important storage ring and a detailed map of the area. Considering he was heading into the desert, these items would be invaluable. As he walked across the bridge, he recalled Wang Yi's warning. The wilderness was heavily influenced by the power of the Heavenly Way, which meant all electronic devices would be rendered useless. It was almost like an apocalyptic wasteland where monsters constantly migrated between their nests. These maps had an extremely short lifespan. Without up-to-date intelligence, tracking down monsters, let alone boss creatures, was nearly impossible. According to the map, firebirds and thunder rhinoceroses were the most common creatures in the area, easily identifiable when they moved. There was also a section marked with a question mark, something Wang Yi had explicitly warned him to avoid, as it housed an extremely dangerous nest. However, the Goblin Dungeon seemed like the perfect spot for him. It had low-level monsters, decent numbers, and very few people exploring it. Clenching his fist with determination, Jiang Chen smiled. With a map in hand, finding the dungeon would be easy. Just as he was lost in thought, a voice suddenly called out, ordering him to stop. Instantly on alert, Jiang Chen turned his head to see who it was. A cloaked man had approached and placed a hand on his shoulder, staring at him aggressively. The man had apparently been calling for him for a while and demanded to know why Jiang Chen had ignored him. He insisted he only wanted to ask a question. Had Jiang Chen seen a girl with golden hair in the area? Jiang Chen turned to him, his gaze cold and dangerous. Without hesitation, he replied that he hadn't seen anyone matching that description. Then, narrowing his eyes, he added a sharp warning. The man should be careful with how he spoke. At that moment, a faint trace of Little Nine's poisonous mist began seeping from Jiang Chen's shoulder, sticking to the man's hand. The man quickly yanked his hand back, his expression shifting to confusion. He clenched his teeth and examined his hand, clearly wondering if this was poison. It didn't make sense. Jiang Chen hadn't even reached level 10 yet. How could he possibly wield such a dangerous ability? But despite the man's strength, being a level 27 main defense warrior, Jiang Chen remained unfazed. Without looking back, he calmly advised the man to find a healer quickly, as his poison wouldn't be easy to cure. Then, with a smirk, he added that the man should also take better care of his brain. With that, Jiang Chen turned and walked away. The man's face twisted in anger. Gritting his teeth, he barked at Jiang Chen, demanding to know who had given him permission to leave. Jiang Chen paused and slowly turned his head, his gaze now carrying a murderous intensity. The air around them grew heavy. The man stepped forward, his body radiating a powerful aura. Locking eyes with Jiang Chen, he sneered and demanded, "How dare you lay a hand on the Shao family?" Jiang Chen narrowed his eyes. Was this man referring to that Shao family from the Battle of Heaven? He barely had time to process the thought before the man lunged at him with full force. But Jiang Chen had already anticipated the attack. Just as the man's fist came crashing down, Jiang Chen swiftly sidestepped, leaping away in one fluid motion. The impact shattered the ground, sending debris flying. Still airborne, Jiang Chen raised a hand in front of his face, his expression darkening as he studied his attacker. What exactly did the Shao family want? The man, clearly seething, clenched his teeth and charged forward at high speed. Unsheathing his sword, he couldn't help but acknowledge Jiang Chen's agility. "Not bad," he muttered. Seeing the fight escalating, Jiang Chen pulled back his hood and stretched his hand to the side. In an instant, Little Nine's poisonous mist swirled around him. His gaze sharpened as he gave her a simple command. It was no longer necessary to hold back. Little Nine materialized within the mist, her eyes locked onto the man with a murderous glint. "Understood," she replied. But instead of backing off, the man became even more aggressive. He let out a furious shout, mocking Jiang Chen for trying the same trick again. Did he really think this poison would scare him twice? Just as Jiang Chen was about to teach this guy a painful lesson, a voice cut through the tension. "Zheng Tai," someone called out sharply. The sudden interruption made Zheng Tai freeze. His expression changed in an instant. His rage was replaced by something close to fear. Slowly, he turned his head, his jaw clenched so tightly it looked painful. Jiang Chen remained silent, watching intently. Who was this? A man with striking blue hair, dressed in a hooded cloak, had appeared behind Zheng Tai. His presence alone exuded authority, and his expression was nothing short of furious. His gaze locked onto Zheng Tai like a predator eyeing weak prey. "What the hell are you doing here?" the blue-haired man demanded, his voice filled with irritation. "I told you to find someone, not start a damn scene." Zheng Tai visibly trembled. He tried to explain, but before he could get a single word out, the man turned away slightly and scoffed. "Trash," he muttered coldly. "All you do is cause problems." Zheng Tai's fear spiked. He barely had time to react before the blue-haired man delivered a brutal uppercut to his chin. Blood spurted from his nose as he stumbled back, gasping in pain. Jiang Chen observed the exchange, realizing that this man wasn't just part of the Shao family. He was someone with serious authority. The blue-haired man turned his head slightly, his energy flaring ominously. Fixing Zheng Tai with a deadly glare, he reminded him, "You're nothing but a dog of the Shao family. You have no right to even speak our name." Zheng Tai, still reeling from the punch, could do nothing but tremble in fear. Zheng Tai immediately dropped to his knees, bowing his head in submission. He apologized profusely, swearing that he wouldn't make the same mistake again. Now that the confrontation had de-escalated, Jiang Chen calmly pulled his hood back on, turning his gaze toward them in silent observation. Strangely enough, he had never sensed the presence of the blue-haired man before. It didn't take long for him to realize that this guy was far more dangerous than the so-called warrior he had just dealt with. As Zheng Tai shakily got back on his feet, the blue-haired man approached Jiang Chen, his tone surprisingly polite. He offered an apology, explaining that his dog had a bad habit of biting things. As compensation, he was willing to make amends. Jiang Chen waved it off. "No need," he replied simply. The man smiled and took another step closer. "Are you heading to the desert?" he asked, his aura subtly intensifying as he locked eyes with Jiang Chen. "Want to travel together?" Jiang Chen met his gaze but remained silent for several moments. Then, without a word, he turned his back on them and started walking away. He preferred to go alone. The blue-haired man watched him go, saying nothing. But in his mind, he found Jiang Chen very interesting. He already knew that Jiang Chen had awakened the divine class ability, known as Spiritual Master. Once Jiang Chen was far enough away, Zheng Tai cautiously approached the man and hesitantly asked if he should continue searching for the target they had been after. The man barely glanced at him before shaking his head. "No, By the time you find her, it'll already be too late. His tone was cold yet assured. Besides, I already have a clue. The girl escaped the city. She's probably trying to cross the desert to reach the next station. With that, he raised a hand and pulled down his hood, revealing his full face. As he began walking away, he gave a final order. Make sure she never arrives. Zheng Tai pressed both hands against his chest, lowered his head, and closed his eyes in submission. Understood, he responded solemnly. The world had changed. Humans had once spread across this planet, building countless cities. But with the arrival of the awakened era, waves of beasts, secret realms, and dungeons had invaded their homes. Ancient human settlements had been remodeled and repurposed to withstand the chaos. Now, only the awakened, those who sought power, dared to return to these places, battling monsters to level up and claim wealth. These perilous zones were now known as the Wildlands. Jiangchen advanced through the desolate area, coming across a few scattered mutant rats along the way. Hours passed, and eventually, he arrived at a remote and ruined part of the city. He paused, glancing around. Did I get lost? He had been heading toward the goblin beast's nest, but after walking for what felt like forever, the sun had already set, and he still hadn't arrived. Little Nine, who had been growing increasingly hungry, decided to take matters into her own hands. She hunted down a rat, hopped onto Jiang Chen's head, and bit into her prize. But the moment she tasted it, her expression soured. Chewing slowly, she came to a tragic realization. Not all food was worth eating. As Jiang Chen traveled through the area, he had encountered plenty of monsters, but none of them were strong. The creatures here granted only a tiny boost to his devouring value. If he didn't find a proper beast boss nest soon, it would be a waste of time. And with his impending entry into the Night Watch, he couldn't afford delays. Lost in thought, Jiang Chen gazed ahead with a serious expression. Then, without warning, the sky darkened as heavy storm clouds rolled in. Within seconds, rain began to fall. At that moment, a giant spider lurking nearby sensed his presence. Moving slowly, it descended from the shadows, its many eyes locking onto him with murderous intent. Jiang Chen stretched out his hand, letting raindrops gather on his palm. Immediately, he noticed something unusual. The rain carried traces of magical fluctuations. His eyes lit up. This meant he had wandered into an area where beast slayers operated. A mistake in navigation had actually turned into an unexpected stroke of luck. They had found the beast nest after all. Now, all that was left was hunting down a powerful enough monster to finally fill his devouring bar for the first time. Sensing movement behind him, Jiang Chen turned his head and met the spider's piercing gaze. The two stared at each other in silence for several seconds. Little Nine manifested beside him, her sharp eyes fixed on the creature. Do you want me to handle it? She asked. Jiang Chen lifted his chin slightly and studied the monster. Despite its intimidating size, its actual level wasn't high. It was just big. Without breaking eye contact, he responded, no need, as if taking that as a challenge. The spider landed on the ground with a heavy thud, its sharp legs flexing as it prepared to strike. Its beady eyes glowed with predatory hunger. Then, without hesitation, it lunged. The spider's razor-sharp legs slashed toward him, but Jiang Chen barely exerted any effort. His movements were swift and precise, dodging each attack with effortless jumps, as if he was dancing through the rain. Sensing an opening, he suddenly gathered momentum and leaped high into the air. In the blink of an eye, he was above the monster. The spider's head tilted back, its eyes widening in panic. Well, what is he doing? Jiang Chen clenched his fist tightly, then brought it down with devastating force. Boom! The impact sent shockwaves through the ground, shattering the stone beneath them and crushing the spider instantly. Its lifeless body collapsed, sprawled out in the destruction. Jiang Chen remained standing on top of the fallen monster, momentarily lost in thought. Then, Little Nine appeared beside him, placing a hand on her forehead as if sensing something. More monsters are coming, she informed him. Her voice snapped him out of his trance. He turned his head and was immediately surprised. The sound of his strike had drawn the attention of the other creatures lurking in the area. All around him, giant spiders began creeping closer, their gleaming fangs ready to strike. Still standing atop the fallen beast, Jiang Chen calmly stretched his hand to the side. With a swirl of poisonous mist, he summoned the dagger he had obtained earlier from the secret realm. As he and Little Nine stared at the oncoming horde, a smirk tugged at his lips. It's time for a good meal. Jiang Chen and Little Nine locked eyes with the approaching giant spiders, their expressions sharp and deadly. He turned to her. Ready? Without hesitation, she nodded. Always. With that, Jiang Chen activated Little Nine's poisonous mist and lunged forward. In the blink of an eye, he was upon the spiders, his dagger slicing through their bodies with ruthless precision. The mist seeped into their wounds, corroding them from the inside. As they advanced, their levels climbed rapidly. If they kept fighting monsters at this rate, they could easily level up 2 more times on their way back. The battle was over in seconds. Those that hadn't died immediately collapsed moments later as the poison finished its work. In an instant, the battlefield was reduced to a massive pile of corpses. Jiang Chen approached the remains and gestured toward them. Go ahead, little nine. Devour them all. Her eyes sparkled with delight. Stretching her arms out, she beamed at him. Thank you. Just as she was about to begin, she suddenly froze. Tilting her head to the side, she focused on something in the distance. Something big, powerful, and delicious is coming, she murmured. Jiang Chen's gaze sharpened. If she was this excited, then there was no doubt. It had to be the boss. Turning toward the approaching presence, he extended his hand, poisonous mist swirling around him. Prepare to attack, he ordered. Through the thick fog, a shadowy figure emerged. Little Nine, obeying without question, lunged forward. A sharp cry of pain rang through the air. Jiang Chen's brow furrowed. That didn't sound like a monster. Glancing toward the source of the scream, he was met with an unexpected sight, a woman. Little Nine had miscalculated. Instead of attacking the boss, she had struck an unknown woman, tearing part of her clothing in the process. Within seconds, the stranger collapsed onto the ground unconscious. Jiang Chen remained still, studying her. What kind of magical creature is this? Several seconds later, the woman stirred. Her eyes fluttered open, filled with confusion as she gazed up at the sky. Where am I? She wondered. Slowly, she pushed herself upright with one hand while placing the other on her head, trying to regain her bearings. She had no memory of coming to this place. Jiang Chen approached and casually sat beside her, resting his elbows on his knees. Closing his eyes for a brief moment, he then flashed a relaxed smile. You're awake. The sound of his voice jolted her alert. Her body tensed as her mind raced. Who is he? Without hesitation, she jumped to her feet, instantly creating distance between them. Adopting a defensive stance, she kept her eyes locked on him. Who are you? Don't come any closer. Jiang Chen stood up as well, but remained calm. Facing her directly, he spoke in an even tone. Relax. I'm just a job changer. I came to the desert to hunt monsters. He paused before adding, I have no intention of harming you. As the woman looked at Jiang Chen more closely, a spark of recognition flashed in her eyes. Her expression shifted, and she placed a hand on her chest while pointing at him with the other. You? I know you. You were the one who attacked me, she exclaimed, staring at him intently. Jiang Chen let out a small, nervous chuckle. Closing his eyes briefly, he flashed a polite smile and apologized. That was my mistake. I thought you were a monster. Hearing this, she pouted and turned toward him, her cheeks slightly flushed. How could you mistake a beautiful girl like me for a monster? She huffed. That's just presumptuous. Then, as if the thought had just hit her, panic set in. She frantically touched her face, feeling her nose and ears, checking to make sure everything was still in place. Jiang Chen simply observed her in silence. He had used all his strength when he attacked, yet here she was, standing in front of him as if nothing had happened. His curiosity grew. Who exactly is she? After confirming that she was unharmed, she finally relaxed. With a quick motion, she extended her hand to the side, causing the golden ring on her finger to glow and emit a faint green energy. A holographic display appeared, revealing the time. The moment she saw it, her expression darkened. Too much time wasted. She muttered under her breath. Without another word, she turned her back on Jiang Chen and started walking away in a hurry. Jiang Chen didn't stop her, but his sharp gaze followed her every move. Why is she in such a rush? More importantly, who is she running from? The woman had almost completely distanced herself from him when, suddenly, she stopped in her tracks. A flicker of hesitation crossed her face as she covered her mouth and began nervously biting her nails. Jiang Chen immediately sensed something was wrong. Without hesitation, he approached her. Is there a problem? He asked, studying her closely. Her posture stiffened. With her back still turned, she slowly glanced over her shoulder, forcing an obviously fake smile. Oh, yeah, there are monsters up ahead, she stammered. Since I'm not very good at fighting, I decided to turn back and let you handle them. The moment those words left her mouth, her nervous demeanor disappeared. Turning away once more, she casually waved over her shoulder. Well, that's that. See ya. And just like that, she took off again. Jiang Chen stood still, his expression blank. Then, after a brief pause, he sighed. Her acting skills are truly pathetic. At that moment, the rain intensified, and the woman disappeared into the downpour. Jiang Chen resumed walking, his thoughts shifting. If there were monsters up ahead, then good. He wanted more monsters. They weren't a threat to him, and every battle meant more devouring points. But there was another problem. He turned his head slightly, his eyes darkening with a serious expression. Dealing with other job changers? Now, that could be tricky. The desert had always been a lawless place. Many who came here weren't just hunting monsters. They were hunting people, looting and killing without consequence. His thoughts circled back to the woman from before. Would it be a good idea to capture her and question her properly? While Jiang Chun was deep in thought, Little Nine suddenly materialized beside him, pointing ahead with a serious expression. A lot of monsters are coming from that direction, she informed him. Far from feeling alarmed, Jiang Chun was thrilled. He turned slightly toward her, a grin forming. That's great news. But his excitement was short-lived. As he shifted his gaze forward, his eyes widened in shock. Emerging from the darkness were hundreds of giant spiders, identical to the ones he had just defeated. But among them was something even more terrifying, an enormous spider, much larger than the rest, its many eyes fixed on him with a murderous glare. Jiang Chen's energy flared around him as he took in the situation. This isn't good. Fighting a handful of them was one thing, but taking on an entire swarm? That was another matter entirely. As the spiders inched closer, he couldn't help but recall the woman's warning. So she wasn't lying after all. Despite being surrounded, he felt oddly relieved. He'd much rather deal with monsters than get caught up in battles with ruthless job changers. Then, without warning, the swarm charged. Their enraged screeches filled the air as they lunged toward him, their monstrous bodies moving at terrifying speeds. Jiang Chen's excitement returned. Why would he ever run from something so valuable? Each of these creatures meant more devouring points. Without hesitation, he unsheathed both daggers, his energy surging as a suffocating aura enveloped him. Little Nine, he commanded, activate the poisonous mist. Understood, she responded instantly. A thick, venomous mist poured from the daggers in his hands. In a blink, the first wave of giant spiders reached him. They bared their fangs, their grotesque mouths widening as they prepared to strike. Jiang Chen didn't move. For several tense seconds, he remained still, letting the mist coil around him like a living entity. Then, one of the spiders lunged. In an instant, Jiang Chun vanished, moving at blinding speed. Reappearing midair, he slashed through the spider's body in a single motion, cutting it clean in half. Poison seeped into its wounds as the severed pieces hit the ground with a sickening thud. Still airborne, he turned his head slightly, his fierce gaze locking onto the rest of the swarm. Something's off. These spiders were faster than before. Why? Before he could dwell on it, another spider shot toward him at incredible speed, aiming to take him by surprise. Jiang Chen immediately sensed the attack. He glanced back, slightly startled by how quickly it had closed the gap. But unfortunately for the creature, Jiang Chen wasn't one to be caught off guard. Just as it lunged, he moved. In one fluid motion, his daggers flashed, slicing through its body effortlessly. The spiders remained scattered across the ground. Seconds later, Jiang Chen landed, his stance firm, both daggers dripping with venomous mist. His gaze flickered to the lifeless bodies around him. But something felt wrong. Lowering his gaze, he noticed a faint stinging sensation. A thin cut ran across his abdomen. It was barely a wound, but the fact that one of them had managed to land a hit at all meant something had changed. Suddenly, the smaller spiders surged forward, moving in perfect coordination. Jiang Chen quickly realized something was different. These monsters weren't acting randomly. They're cooperating. Narrowing his eyes, he scanned the swarm. Then he spotted it, a massive spider, far larger than the rest, with 6 glowing eyes that burned with intelligence. The boss. It didn't take long for Jiang Chun to come to a conclusion. This spider was controlling the others. And then, as if summoned by the boss's will, thousands of spiders emerged from the darkness, surrounding him on all sides. Jiang Chun remained completely still, his body shrouded in Little Nine's poisonous mist. Now it all made sense. The creatures in this area didn't just rely on sheer numbers. They had strategy. This was why no one dared enter this place. Fixing his gaze on the boss, Jiang Chen knew the only way to win was simple. Kill the leader, and the swarm would fall apart. But with this many enemies, even though it was easier said than done. As he weighed his options, Little Nine materialized through the mist, placing a hand on his shoulder. Her expression was serious as she locked eyes with the boss. I understand now, she said. These creatures, they're trying to challenge their master. Jiang Chun frowned slightly, turning toward her. Challenge? What are you talking about? Little Nine scoffed, folding her arms. How arrogant. Without another word, she extended her arms to the sides, tilted her head back, and let out a thunderous roar. The effect was instantaneous. The spiders, previously moving with terrifying unity, suddenly froze. And then, complete chaos. The swarm panicked. Spiders scattered in every direction, their formation crumbling as they desperately tried to flee. Jiang Chen blinked, momentarily stunned. Wait, they're running? His mind raced. Could it be that these creatures, despite being monsters, were also insects? If that was the case, then Little Nine turned to him, a smug expression on her face. I severed the connection between the boss and its swarm, she announced. Jiang Chun hadn't expected her abilities to work like this. But now, with the horde in total disarray, the battle had just become a lot easier. He tightened his grip on his daggers, a dangerous glint in his eyes. Nice work, he praised. Now let's end this. Little Nine began shifting back into her true form, her predatory gaze locked onto the boss. Understood, master. With his body still radiating poisonous mist, Jiang Chun gathered momentum and launched himself forward. In a blur of movement, his daggers sliced through the chaos, cutting down the now disorganized spiders with ease. Without the boss controlling them, they were nothing more than scattered prey. And Jiang Chun? He was the predator. Jiang Chun moved at lightning speed, slicing through the scattered monsters with his daggers. Now that they were disorganized and no longer a threat, he wasted no time. In just a few swift movements, several monsters fell before him. Without hesitation, he gathered momentum, leaped high into the air, and locked onto his final target, the boss. The monstrous creature let out a deafening roar, its murderous gaze fixed on Jiang Chun. But he didn't flinch, meeting its stare with unwavering confidence. He knew this was the last obstacle standing in his way. More importantly, this boss held the highest devouring value. The beast attempted to defend itself, but before it could even react, Jiang Chun struck. With both daggers, he landed a precise and deadly blow to its head, infusing the wounds with Little Nine's poisonous mist. Despite its overwhelming size, the boss crumbled in seconds, its massive body collapsing to the ground. Jiang Chun landed smoothly atop the fallen creature, his dagger still in hand as the venomous mist swirled around him. Staring at the lifeless corpse, he knew it was time. The moment had come to breed the swarm of insects. As he stood there, a system window flashed before his eyes, announcing his victory. He had leveled up. Now at level 14, his power evaluation soared to 127 stars, and his passive abilities and level-up effects remained active. Clenching his fist, he felt the surge of newfound strength flowing through his body. A smirk formed on his lips. With 127 stars, his combat power was already approaching that of a level 25 professional in the combat class. But there was still more to gain. Turning his attention back to the battlefield, he realized the remaining small spiders had begun to flee. They weren't foolish creatures. Recognizing Jiang Chun's overwhelming strength and the terrifying aura of the mother insect, they knew they stood no chance. Though he could have hunted them down for more points, he decided against it. There was something far more important at hand. It was time to begin the process. Stepping toward the fallen monsters, the poisonous mist thickened. Little Nine slowly emerged, her presence exuding an eerie, lethal energy. Fixing his gaze on the boss's corpse, Jiang Chun clenched his fist tightly, then raised the other toward the sky. With a firm declaration, he granted the remains to Little Nine. Hearing this, she acknowledged him with gratitude before reverting to her true form. With a single leap, she lunged toward the massive corpse, sinking her fangs into its flesh. As she began devouring the body, another system window appeared. The reward? 600 devouring points. While Little Nine feasted on the fallen boss, Jiang Chun turned to the side, deep in thought. Elite monsters like this one were on a completely different level from regular creatures, providing a much higher devouring value. It didn't take him long to realize that hunting more of these powerful foes and rapidly breeding his swarm of insects was the most efficient path to gaining strength. Just moments later, a system notification popped up in front of him. The devouring value had reached its maximum. The system prompted him to begin the insect breeding process. As Jiang Chun stared at the notification, he couldn't help but be impressed by how quickly the value had filled up. It confirmed what he had suspected. Elite monsters were far more rewarding than ordinary ones. Seconds later, Little Nine returned to her human form. Kneeling before him, she placed one hand on the ground and lowered her head in respect. She informed him that she was ready to reproduce and requested permission to continue following him, now with even greater strength. Jiang Chun remained silent for a moment, his powerful aura radiating around him as he processed everything. Then, with a faint smile, he decided it was time to begin. Right on cue, another system notification appeared, confirming that Little Nine had initiated the first generation of mass insect breeding. Suddenly, both of their bodies emitted waves of energy, and the system informed him that his passive abilities, accelerated growth of talents and blessing of the growth of all things, were now in effect. Jiang Chun turned his gaze toward Little Nine, realizing just how effective his abilities were in accelerating the process. Then, a strange mark appeared on his hand. He didn't have to think too hard to understand what it meant. A system notification quickly confirmed his suspicion. He had unlocked 2 new exclusive abilities, Insect Nest and Dominion. Before he could fully process this, another message appeared. The breeding process had been accelerated, and only 8 seconds remained. Lifting his head toward the sky, Jiang Chun's eyes widened in shock. What he saw was nothing short of astonishing. Little Nine stood with her arms spread wide, and in the blink of an eye, an overwhelming swarm of insects filled the air around them. The system congratulated him. The first insect swarm had been successfully bred. The total? 2,300 insects. Jiang Chun turned to the side, watching the massive colony in awe. A grin spread across his face. He hadn't expected the first breeding cycle to produce over 2,000 offspring. And this was just the beginning. If this was a result of the first generation, what kind of numbers would he see by the third or fourth? One of the newly born insects fluttered toward him. Feeling its presence, Jiang Chun reached out and gently stroked its head. He actually liked these creatures. However, their abilities were quite different from Little Nine's. As if responding to his curiosity, a status window appeared, revealing the swarm's name. Son of Nine, Wings of Miasma. It had 4 powerful abilities. 1. Poisonous Mist, a corrosive toxin that could devour anything it touched. 2. Camouflage, a skill that allowed the insects to blend into their surroundings by reflecting light off their wings. 3. Fury, an ability that consumed devouring value in exchange for temporarily boosting strength and speed. 4. Self-destruction, a last resort attack where the insect would detonate its body, unleashing deadly toxins and causing massive damage. Jiang Chun analyzed the newly acquired abilities, particularly camouflage and self-destruction. Both seemed incredibly useful. Lost in thought, he barely noticed when Little Nine silently approached him from behind. With a gentle hug, she closed her eyes and smiled, drawing his attention back to the moment. Hearing her soft voice, Jiang Chun snapped out of his trance. Turning his head slightly toward her, he couldn't help but smile. A rare sense of ease washed over him. Facing her fully, he reached out and lightly ruffled her hair. Something about her felt different, yet in many ways she was still the same. With a bright, joyful expression, Little Nine placed her hands on her chest and informed him that the insect breeding process was complete. Then, without hesitation, she clasped Jiang Chun's arm with both hands and requested to rest. Jiang Chun raised an eyebrow at her words. Rest, he thought. Before he could ask for clarification, Little Nine's body began to fade. Startled, he turned his gaze toward his hand, watching in confusion as she completely disappeared. A system notification popped up at that moment, explaining what had happened. Little Nine had returned to the insect nest. Jiang Chun examined his hand, and, realizing she was safe, let out a small chuckle of relief. The system space was truly remarkable. It could house entire insect swarms, meaning he no longer had to worry about them being discovered by outsiders. The insect nest ability was a powerful tool, granted at its maximum level, meaning it couldn't be leveled up any further. Curious about his other newly acquired skill, Dominion, Jiang Chun decided to test it. Extending his hand to the side, he activated the ability. Immediately, a suffocating aura exploded from his body, his eyes glowing ominously. The insects surrounding him reacted instantly. One by one, they turned toward him, their gazes filled with an eerie, murderous intent. Jiang Chun met their stares with equal intensity, instinctively understanding the nature of the skill. Raising his hand to the sky, he activated Dominion, and the swarm began to absorb into his control. A realization struck him. Manipulating this ability was as effortless as moving an arm. But what truly amazed him was the extent of his connection. Not only could he command the insects, but he could also see through their senses. As his perception expanded, he became aware of the hidden dangers lurking in the area. The entire place was teeming with monsters, lying in wait for their next prey. Turning his head slightly, he observed his insects' behavior and smirked. They were just as eager as he was. With a deadly glint in his eyes, Jiang Chun locked onto the monsters. The poisonous mist of Little Nine swirled around him as he issued a simple command, attack. Without hesitation, thousands of insects surged forward, their first act of destruction, reducing a nearby building to rubble. The deafening collapse echoed through the area, successfully drawing the attention of every lurking monster. As expected, the creatures turned their heads toward the disturbance, their curiosity piqued. One by one, they began to close in, eager to investigate. Jiang Chun saw no reason to wait any longer. With Little Nine's poisonous mist swirling around him, he advanced toward the monsters. They quickly realized what was about to happen and attempted to flee, but it was already too late. Before they could make a move, the deadly mist surged forward, engulfing them in seconds. The corrosive toxin clung to their bodies, eating away at their flesh as they let out agonized cries. One by one, they collapsed, their bodies dissolving into nothingness as the mist continued its relentless feast. Jiang Chun walked up to the fallen creatures, his gaze fixed on their remains. With the swarm of insects at his side, there was barely any need for him to lift a finger anymore. The range and potency of the poisonous mist had increased significantly, devouring its targets faster and more efficiently. On top of that, with Dominion, he now had shared vision with his swarm. Common monsters had nowhere to hide. As he observed the mist breaking down the corpses, a satisfied smile crossed his lips. Soon, he would be able to breed even more insects. He suddenly remembered that he hadn't checked how much devouring value was required for the next breeding cycle. Opening the system window, his eyes widened in shock. Something unexpected had appeared on the interface. What was this? Before he could process it, the scene shifted. Not far from Jiang Chen's location, inside an abandoned warehouse, a hooded man with green hair had just returned, his face pale with fear. Gasping for breath, he hurried over to his leader and reported his findings. The tall, braided-haired man narrowed his eyes. "You're late," he snapped. "Now, tell me, what's really going on in the spider's nest?" The green-haired subordinate swallowed hard before speaking. His voice trembled as he revealed the unbelievable truth. The entire spider's nest had been annihilated. A complete, merciless massacre. Not a single monster had survived. Silence filled the room. The leader's eyes widened in shock. "You think this is some kind of joke?" he asked, his voice laced with disbelief. Another man standing nearby stepped closer, equally stunned by the report. The green-haired man shook his head. "It's the truth," he insisted, his expression deadly serious. "The city of monsters, it's in ruins." The leader placed a hand on his chin, deep in thought. How is this possible? The nest had been reduced to ashes, completely wiped out. It was terrifying to even imagine. His first suspicion was that the Night Watch might be responsible. However, he quickly dismissed that theory. This wasn't their style. That meant only one thing: a hidden force was at work. Perhaps a secret operation from a powerful family or a highly skilled assault squad. Either way, one thing was clear: they needed to retreat. For them, this mission had ended in utter failure. They had been tasked with collecting venom from a wolf spider, but now that was out of the question. Frustrated, the leader decided they would recoup their losses another way, by robbing some unfortunate souls on their way back. Hearing this, one of the men beside him stiffened, breaking into a nervous sweat. Something about this felt off. Just as they were discussing their next move, the door to the abandoned warehouse suddenly creaked open. The sudden creak of the door sent a jolt through the three men. Instinctively, they snapped their heads toward the entrance. The green-haired man tensed, immediately warning the others. They had an unexpected visitor. Their minds raced. Who could it be? A figure stepped forward, pushing the door open with a deliberate slowness. His calm voice echoed through the dimly lit warehouse. "Finally, I found some professionals." The leader narrowed his eyes. "Who are you?" The newcomer, Jiang Chun. Without hesitation, he strode toward them, his movements confident and unhurried. Dropping a severed arm to the ground, he extended his hand toward them, his expression unreadable. In a composed tone, he assured them there was no need to be alarmed. He had only come to level up. He even added that he was looking to trade some food. The leader exhaled slightly, relieved to see Jiang Chun had arrived alone. Studying him closely, he smirked and agreed to an exchange, remarking that food in the desert wasn't cheap. With a casual air, he asked Jiang Chun what he had to offer. But not everyone was convinced. The man standing beside him tensed, his demeanor shifting into an aggressive stance as he locked eyes with Jiang Chun. Undeterred, Jiang Chun stepped closer to the leader, maintaining steady eye contact. A faint smile played on his lips as he calmly reassured them. There was no need for hostility. He claimed to have some truly valuable items for trade. At this, the tense man's expression flickered, first with doubt, then with intrigue. He couldn't help but wonder what Jiang Chun was hiding. The leader, equally curious, ordered him to reveal his so-called trade goods. The moment the words left his mouth, the two men beside him subtly adjusted their grip, their hands drifting toward their swords. Then, with eerie smiles, they slowly began unsheathing their blades. Jiang Chun barely reacted. He simply turned his head slightly, watching them from the corner of his eye, and let out an amused chuckle. As expected, he had never trusted them to begin with. Without hesitation, he activated the ring. Raising his hand, he released its contents. In the blink of an eye, several wolf spiders emerged, their gleaming eyes locking onto the men with piercing, predatory intent. Jiang Chun turned his back on them, his tone dripping with mockery. "So, do my products interest you?" The effect was immediate. The men stiffened, their smirks vanishing. Panic set in as they sheathed their swords and instinctively stepped back, their bodies now rigid with tension. Cold sweat trickled down their foreheads. They knew exactly what these spiders were: wolf spiders. But that didn't make sense. Hadn't the entire spider's nest been annihilated? A terrifying realization struck them all at once. Was Jiang Chun the one responsible for the massacre? Jiang Chun, now at level 17, turned his head slightly, his eyes gleaming with an overwhelming, almost suffocating presence. With a knowing smirk, he addressed them once more. "Don't think I don't know what you were planning." Then, with complete nonchalance, he sat down on a nearby rock, resting one arm on his knee. After a brief pause, he spoke again, his tone far too calm for comfort. I'm in a bad mood right now. So, I'd suggest you pick up your things and get lost. The three men didn't need to be told twice. Grabbing their belongings, they spun around and bolted for the exit. As they ran, they yelled apologies over their shoulders, swearing they meant no trouble and promising to leave immediately. Minutes later, once the warehouse had fallen silent again, Jiang Chun stretched out his hand. Little Nine's poisonous mist seeped into the air. He issued a command, summon the swarm. Still seated on the rock, he casually lifted an arm and let the mist release 2 of his insects. They fluttered into the air, their murderous gaze scanning the surroundings for any hidden threats. Jiang Chun casually sipped the leftover soup from the men who had fled earlier. His hunger was getting worse, and he realized he should have expected this. When he first obtained Little Nine, he never imagined that leading a swarm of insects would have side effects like this. As he drank, a system notification suddenly popped up. His devouring value had increased. Devouring value, 2,768/1 million. The system advised him to increase it as soon as possible. Jiang Chun frowned. Originally, he thought that once his insect swarm doubled, the devouring value would increase much faster. However, what he hadn't expected was that the cost of the next reproduction cycle had also doubled. This complicated things. At this rate, even if he wiped out every beast nest outside the city, it wouldn't be enough to reach the required devouring value. Even elite monsters were now just a drop in the bucket. Jiang Chun lowered his gaze, lost in thought. He recalled hearing rumors that the Night Watch controlled powerful beast nests and secret realms, but they weren't made public. That meant if he truly wanted to rapidly strengthen his swarm, he would have to join the Night Watch as soon as possible. As he sat there, he glanced at his hand, where Little Nine still hadn't woken up. Seeing this, he quickly concluded that the burden of reproduction was immense. Just then his instincts flared. Someone was approaching. His expression darkened as he snapped his head to the side, his entire body tensing. Clenching his fist, he adjusted his stance, muscles coiled like a spring. The air was thick with the scent of battle. Someone was being pursued. Seconds later, a girl using an invisibility spell stumbled into the warehouse and crashed directly into him. The sudden impact knocked her to the ground. It was her, supporting herself with one hand. She winced, pressing the other against her aching head. Jiang Chun turned to her, his brows furrowing in confusion. Why had he encountered her again? The girl, still on the ground, lifted her head and locked eyes with him. Recognition flickered across her face. She knew him. Her gaze immediately filled with fear. "Don't tell anyone you saw me here," she pleaded, her voice barely above a whisper. Jiang Chun was taken aback. He turned to her, his expression shifting into one of shock. She had been so close, and he hadn't even sensed her presence. It didn't take him long to piece it together. The person being hunted, the one that blue-haired man had been chasing, was her. He quickly decided to get her out of there. But before he could make a move, he felt it. Another presence. Jiang Chen's body stiffened as he turned his gaze toward the warehouse entrance. It was too late to leave. Moments later, several figures entered the warehouse. Among them was Jing Tai, accompanied by a man with striking blue hair, a member of the Shao family. As they advanced toward Jiang Chun, Jing Tai quickly recognized him, and a chill ran down his spine. Panic flickered across his face as he pointed at Jiang Chun, urgently informing his leader that this was the same person they had encountered before. The blue-haired man casually slipped a hand into his pocket, studying Jiang Chun with a smirk. Amused, he praised his subordinate for having a sharp sense of smell. Meanwhile, Jiang Chun remained unfazed, sitting back down on a nearby rock, resting his hands on his knees, and maintaining his silence. Taking a closer look around, the man realized the warehouse was deserted, aside from Jiang Chun, who seemed to be camping alone. Jing Tai's expression darkened as he glared at him, his anger barely restrained. Without wasting time, he demanded to know if a girl had entered the warehouse moments ago, warning that if Jiang Chun didn't answer immediately, this time he wouldn't be so forgiving. Before Jing Tai could escalate the situation, the blue-haired man raised a hand to stop him, signaling for patience. He took a seat on a rock in front of Jiang Chun, his interest piqued. From the energy Jiang Chun radiated, he could tell he belonged to the spiritual master class. But what surprised him even more was the rapid increase in his level. It had been less than a day since their last encounter, yet Jiang Chun was already at level 16. Intrigued, the man set that thought aside for now, shifting his focus back to the matter at hand. Leaning slightly forward, he drew his sword and casually aimed it at Jiang Chun's neck, his expression turning serious. Without hesitation, he asked if a girl with black hair had passed through this area. His subordinates, now gathered behind him, remained silent, awaiting Jiang Chun's response. Jiang Chun, however, remained calm, locking eyes with the man. In that instant, he could tell This person's aura was overwhelming, far surpassing level 30. The accuracy with which the man had assessed his class and level made Jiang Chun suspect he possessed some sort of detection artifact. After a brief pause, Jiang Chun turned his head slightly and pointed toward the back door of the warehouse. He explained that he had seen a shadow moving in that direction, but admitted he wasn't sure if it was the person they were looking for, as he wasn't of the perceptive class. The blue-haired man considered his words for a moment before slowly rising to his feet. Though still skeptical, he chose to believe Jiang Chun for now. However, he left him with a warning, advising him to be more honest in the future. Jiang Chun raised an eyebrow, slightly surprised by the remark. The man then turned his back to him, but cast a final glance over his shoulder, his gaze laced with silent threat. With an unmistakable sense of menace, he warned Jiang Chun that if he found out he had helped that girl, the Shao family would make sure he paid the price. Jiang Chun, unfazed, simply smirked. A few moments later, the man and his subordinates exited the warehouse. As Jiang Chun watched them fade into the distance, a thought crossed his mind. The Shao family might be dangerous, but in Jiang City, the Shao family was the true powerhouse. Jiang Chun fixed a penetrating gaze on the blue-haired man, his mind racing. The city's clans had deep roots, their history stretching back to ancient times. Each of them operated like feudal lords, shrouded in mystery, rarely emerging unless disaster loomed. Some of their strongest warriors were said to wield power great enough to tear the heavens apart. This man, he was even more formidable than Jiang Chun had expected. And being remembered by someone like that? Definitely not a good thing. After a few silent moments, Jiang Chun subtly turned his head toward the warehouse exit. Seeing that the men had already left, he decided there was no reason to linger. Just as he was about to leave, the girl emerged from her hiding spot, hands on her hips, and shot him a grateful smile. She thanked him for saving her. Jiang Chun stood up, turned to face her, and said nothing. Then, without warning, he grabbed her arm. The sudden action made her panic, her mind racing with thoughts of what he was planning. His sharp gaze locked onto hers as he leaned in slightly, his tone firm. She had almost tricked him the last time. Since he had helped her again, he wanted to know exactly how she had gotten into trouble with those men. With Jiang Chun standing so close, she felt her cheeks flush involuntarily. Looking away for a moment, she hesitated before finally explaining. Her family was drowning in debt. That man had tried to take the valuables they were transporting, and intended to kill them all to keep the secret buried. But she had managed to escape. Now, he was after her to make sure no one found out. After finishing her explanation, she glanced at Jiang Chun warily. Her voice dropped slightly as she asked if he was planning to silence her too. Jiang Chun let go of her arm, turned his back on her, and started walking away. Seeing him leave, she placed a hand over her chest, then reached out toward him. Her voice carried sincerity as she told him she would always remember what he had done for her, and that she would be forever grateful. Jiang Chun kept walking, his eyes closing as he clenched his fists. He had no intention of getting tangled in her affairs. But just as he was distancing himself, something felt off. His instincts flared. He abruptly stopped, eyes snapping open. The girl noticed it too. Her face paled as she whispered in alarm. Someone had just cast a barrier spell around the warehouse. Outside, an unseen figure gave the order. Within seconds, movement stirred in the shadows. Jiang Chun turned his gaze toward the warehouse entrance. Escape was now impossible. Even if the girl claimed she didn't know him, their enemies wouldn't believe her. Activating his insect perception, Jiang Chun scanned the surroundings. A cold realization settled in. There was no way out. They were completely surrounded. His expression darkened as he slowly turned toward the entrance, bracing himself for the fight ahead. The girl, sensing the incoming danger, clutched her chest in fear. Then, like a storm rolling in, the blue-haired man and his subordinates reappeared. Their presence was suffocating, an unmistakable killing intent radiating from their bodies. The blue-haired man locked eyes with Jiang Chun, his expression twisted with anger. He had seen through the lie. Without hesitation, he demanded that Jiang Chun hand over the girl. His voice dripped with venom as he called him a bastard, making it clear he knew Jiang Chun had deceived him. Raising a hand, he gave the order. His subordinates lunged forward, their sights set on the girl. Jiang Chun stood motionless, his gaze locked onto the blue-haired man, his expression unreadable. Meanwhile, the girl's face drained of color the moment she saw him. Panic set in, fear gripping her as she turned to Jiang Chun. Her voice trembled as she revealed the truth. This man had already stripped the Luo family of everything they owned. And yet, that still wasn't enough for him. Summoning what little courage she had left, she demanded to know why he was so determined to kill her. The blue-haired man regarded her with an eerie calm. Then, with an almost mocking tone, he asked if he really needed a reason. Jiang Chen's attention shifted to the girl upon hearing that she belonged to the Luo family. His gaze deepened, studying her intently. From their position on the second floor of the abandoned warehouse, Jiang Chen and the girl watched as the man and his subordinate stood below on the first floor. She clenched her fist, extending the other arm defensively as she faced him. With unwavering resolve, she warned that if he killed her, the Luo family would never forgive him. They would hunt him down, ensuring he never lived in peace. Jiang Chen, standing just behind her, simply let his arms fall to his sides, silently watching. The man with blue hair, however, threw his head back and erupted into laughter. His subordinates quickly followed, smirking at her words. Mocking her, he asked if she truly believed that a family like the Luo family had the power to seek revenge. With one hand on his waist, he lowered his head, covering his face with the other as his laughter echoed through the warehouse. The very thought that a second-rate family with a bit of wealth considered themselves a threat was hilarious to him. Then his tone darkened. He revealed a truth that made the girl's blood run cold. Without the protection of the Shao family's ancestors a century ago, the Luo family would have been wiped out long ago. One of his subordinates unsheathed his sword, while the others continued to sneer. Zheng Tai folded his arms, glancing at Jiang Chen with amusement. Lowering his hand from his face, the blue-haired man raised his head and fixed the girl with a serious look. In the eyes of the Shao family, she and her kin were nothing more than lowly peasants. To him, they were cattle, meant to be slaughtered at the Shao family's will. Jiang Chen's expression hardened. His gaze turned sharp, filled with raw hatred. The sheer arrogance of this man was beyond belief. With a smirk, the blue-haired man lifted his hand, his palms suddenly surging with a powerful red energy that crackled and pulsed toward the sky. His eyes locked onto the girl as he taunted her. What could the Luo family possibly investigate if there was nothing left to find? In an instant, the unleashed energy formed a powerful barrier around the abandoned warehouse. The Dragon Prison Formation, an ability unique to the Shao family. The girl's eyes widened in horror. As she looked up at the sky, the realization hit her like a crushing weight. She clutched her chest, her fingers trembling. Panic overtook her. There was no way out. Jiang Chen lifted his head, his eyes narrowing as he took in the barrier surrounding them. Despite the looming danger, he couldn't help but feel a sense of admiration. This blue-haired man was truly an interesting opponent. From their vantage point on the second floor of the abandoned warehouse, Jiang Chen and the girl watched as Zheng Tai unsheathed his sword below. His gaze locked onto the girl, his intent clear. With a cold, ruthless tone, he ordered his men to obey the young master's will. No one was to be left alive. His subordinates responded in unison. Understood. The blue-haired man stood beside Zheng Tai, observing in silence. Seconds later, Zheng Tai prepared to strike. But before he could make a move, the man with blue hair stepped forward and raised a hand, signaling him to stop. His gaze shifted back to Jiang Chen, and a smirk crept onto his face. The girl from the Luo family must die today, he declared. But his attention remained fixed on Jiang Chen, his interest in him only growing. He had long since realized that Jiang Chen wasn't just any fighter. He possessed the divine rank creation class. Still watching him, the man casually explained that the spiritual master, Jiang Chen's class, was an exceptionally rare profession. Unlike most people, he understood its true value. With that, he extended a hand to the side and made an offer. If Jiang Chen captured the girl and handed her over, he would spare his life. Not only that, but he would allow him to serve under the Shao family, an opportunity to obtain everything under the sky. With a confident smile, he asked, "So, what do you think?" The girl, who had her hands on her waist, froze in shock. Meanwhile, Jiang Chen simply let his arms fall to his sides, his expression unreadable. For a few moments, he said nothing. Then a chuckle escaped his lips. He lowered his gaze to the ground, shaking his head slightly before letting out a mocking remark. The bastards of the Shao family sure were good at making offers. The girl immediately turned to look at him, her heart pounding. Was Jiang Chen actually considering it? Panic filled her eyes as uncertainty gripped her. Then, Jiang Chen's demeanor shifted. His gaze snapped back to the blue-haired man, sharp and murderous. "Take your Shao family and go to hell." His voice was laced with contempt. His fists clenched tightly, and in an instant a thick, poisonous mist began to seep from his body, Little Nine's venomous aura spreading into the air. His expression remained cold as he made his stance clear. "I refuse." Then his tone grew even sharper. "If you want to fight, come and get it." The girl gasped as she stepped back instinctively, bringing her hands close to her chest. The venomous mist curling around Jiang Chen sent a shiver down her spine. She had no idea what was happening, but one thing was certain. This was no ordinary ability. The blue-haired man's smirk vanished. His expression twisted with anger. To reject his offer so blatantly, this was an insult. His voice darkened as he barked a single command. "Kill him." Without hesitation, his subordinates sprang into action. Swords were unsheathed, feet pounded against the ground, and within moments, they leaped into the air, surging toward Jiang Chun with deadly intent. Amidst them, Zheng Tai locked his eyes on Jiang Chun and gave a sharp warning to his comrades. Be careful. This one won't go down easily. As the enemies closed in, Jiang Chun remained perfectly still, his sharp eyes tracking their every move. He made no attempt to flee, no sign of fear, just silent observation. Within seconds, they reached the second floor. Zheng Tai's eyes widened as he noticed the poisonous mist surrounding Jiang Chun's body. Wasting no time, he warned his comrades that Jiang Chun could use poison and cautioned them not to attack directly. Realizing the fight was inevitable, the girl quickly hid behind Jiang Chun. At that moment, Jiang Chun deactivated the poisonous mist. Instead, he extended his hand, and a vibrant green energy surged around his body. His gaze locked onto Zheng Tai, his expression unwavering as he revealed a startling fact. Not only could he wield poison, but he also possessed a powerful talent ability. The girl, still behind him, took a few steps back, clutching her chest. Her confusion grew. She had no idea what this ability was. In an instant, green spiritual roots erupted from the ground, spreading rapidly like living vines. Zheng Tai gripped his sword with both hands and lunged forward, preparing to strike. But the moment he looked down and saw the massive roots twisting toward him, he froze in shock. Well, what is this? Before anyone could react, the roots surged forward and coiled tightly around Zheng Tai and his subordinates, trapping them in place. Panic erupted as they struggled against the sudden entanglement, completely bewildered. Jiang Chun, his hand still outstretched, calmly explained. This was his ability, the evolution of all things. The spiritual roots constricted tighter around Zheng Tai's body, squeezing with increasing pressure. He gritted his teeth, gripping the roots in an attempt to break free. His mind raced. A divine rank class? His confusion deepened. He knew Jiang Chun could use poison, but this was something else entirely. Realizing he couldn't afford to hesitate, Zheng Tai gripped his sword with both hands and, using all his strength, slashed through the roots binding him. The others followed his lead, hacking away at the vines. Attack the roots! They're fragile, Zheng Tai shouted. One by one, the severed roots collapsed to the ground, near where the blue-haired man stood. Annoyed, he casually pushed them aside with his hands. But as he did, something clicked in his mind. His expression shifted. You idiot, he suddenly shouted at Zheng Tai. This is just a distraction. But it was too late. While they had been preoccupied cutting through the roots, Jiang Chun had already made his next move. A swarm of insects emerged, their piercing gazes locking onto their prey. Poisonous mist began to swirl around Jiang Chun once more as he extended his hand to the side, his intent clear. His voice carried an air of finality. You're already too late. The girl, still on the ground, leaned back on her hands and lifted her head. Upon seeing the insects, her eyes widened in shock. Meanwhile, Zheng Tai's subordinates remained focused on cutting the roots, completely unaware of the looming threat. Then, Zheng Tai turned his head slightly, only to freeze. His breath hitched, his eyes widened. As he took in the sight of the approaching swarm, beads of sweat formed on his forehead. What were those things? The swarm of insects surged forward at blinding speed, launching a relentless assault on Zheng Tai and his men. Reacting quickly, Zheng Tai raised his sword to block the attack, but his confidence shattered just as quickly as his weapon. Within seconds, the insects tore through the blade like it was made of paper. He froze, his eyes widening in disbelief. Jiang Chun had just destroyed his sword. A cold sweat formed on his forehead as he took a closer look. That wasn't poisonous mist at all. It was something far worse. These weren't just toxins. They were summoned creatures. His stomach dropped. Before he could process what was happening, one of the insects crept up behind him, its mandibles opening wide, ready to strike. He barely had time to react before he felt its presence looming over him. His instincts screamed at him. His head snapped upward, and the moment he saw it, sheer panic took over. He let out a desperate scream, warning his comrades. This isn't poison, it's monsters. But it was too late. Jiang Chun, still controlling the creatures with his outstretched hand, watched Zheng Tai with a cold, murderous gaze. A slow, knowing smile spread across his lips. He had him right where he wanted him. Just as the insect lunged for its prey, a sudden force crashed down onto Zheng Tai's shoulder. A foot. A voice followed, dripping with contempt. Trash. Get lost. Zheng Tai barely had time to turn his head before confusion overtook his face. Jiang Chun, too, was momentarily stunned. The man standing over Zheng Tai was none other than the blue-haired leader of the Shao family. Without hesitation, he unsheathed his sword with a single hand. Gathering momentum, he leaped into the air, his aura flaring as he closed in on Jiang Chun. As he advanced, his body was engulfed in a fierce, orange glow. This was the first form of the king's 9 forms. Jiang Qin remained silent, his body still shrouded in little Nine's poisonous mist. The girl, still sitting on the ground nearby, gasped. She covered her mouth with both hands, eyes wide with fear. Jiang Qin lifted his head. In that instant, he realized something. This man was faster than a mist. His expression tensed. His teeth clenched. A bead of sweat rolled down his temple. There was no time to hesitate. Summoning his power, he activated one of the Shao family's most feared techniques, chasing dragons. A massive dragon, forged from pure spiritual energy, materialized in an instant. Its eyes locked onto Jiang Qin, burning with raw intensity. Then it struck. The sheer force of the attack obliterated the area where Jiang Qin stood, reducing it to rubble. A dense cloud of smoke and dust filled the warehouse, masking everything from view. The blue-haired man stood at the center of the destruction, his sword extended, unwavering. His gaze remained fixed on the swirling smoke. A smug grin spread across his face. Bastard, he muttered. He knew Jiang Qin would be a challenge. But fortunately for him, Jiang Qin's level wasn't high, and his speed wasn't fast enough to keep up. With this blade alone, he was confident he could finish the job. But then, as the dust began to settle, his expression changed. His body stiffened, his breath hitched, because once the smoke cleared, he saw something that made his blood run cold. As the dust settled, Jiang Qin remained standing, alive, but only thanks to the girl. She had used her hidden profession ability, Earth Eternal Shield, to conjure a barrier just in time. But now, with her hands still outstretched toward the shield, cracks spread across its surface like shattered glass. Her body trembled, blood dripping from the corner of her mouth as she turned to Jiang Qin, her voice strained. It hurts? Jiang Qin, standing behind her, stared in shock. Until now, he hadn't realized. She was a defensive type. Meanwhile, the blue-haired man, who had all but forgotten about her, now burned with fury. His attack had been blocked. His teeth clenched as his gaze darkened, and without hesitation, he prepared to strike again. Jiang Qin, however, saw an opportunity. Without wasting a moment, he extended his hand to the side, releasing a thick poisonous mist. Then, with a swift movement, he landed on the ground, ready to counterattack. Just then, a panicked voice called out. One of the blue-haired man's subordinates, lying on the ground, reached out to him in desperation. Be careful. Turning his head slightly, the man caught sight of what the warning was about. Dozens of Jiang Qin's summoned insects were closing in fast. Reacting instantly, he grabbed the nearest subordinate by the hood. The man barely had time to register what was happening before he found himself yanked forward, used as a human shield. The swarm of insects, too simple-minded to realize the trick, sank their fangs into the unfortunate subordinate instead. A blood-curdling scream echoed through the warehouse. The sheer force of the attack sent both bodies flying backward. As the chaos settled, the blue-haired man dropped to one knee, his sword pressed into the ground for support. Blood trickled from his mouth as he coughed, his gaze lowered. From the second floor, Jiang Qin watched the scene unfold, his expression unreadable. But internally, he could only think, what a disgusting bastard. Sacrificing his own man without hesitation. The fallen subordinate, now lying in a pool of his own blood, coughed weakly. His chest had been torn open by the attack, yet somehow, he was still clinging to life. The blue-haired man turned his head slightly, acknowledging him. You endured well, he muttered. Slowly, he stood up and approached Jiang Qin, but not before glancing back at his dying subordinate. I didn't train you for nothing, he added coldly. You truly are strong, but strong wasn't enough. Within moments, the man breathed his last. Ignoring the corpse, the blue-haired man reached into his pocket, pulled out a dragon yuan pill, and swallowed it in one swift motion. He hadn't expected to be pushed this far, but now, Jiang Qin had forced his hand. The moment the pill took effect, his energy surged. With slow, deliberate steps, he advanced toward Jiang Qin, dragging his sword along the ground. The blade scraped against the stone, causing small rocks to lift into the air, as if responding to his aura. Jiang Qin, sensing the shift, immediately assumed an offensive stance. Nearby, the girl remained seated, one hand clutching the wound on her arm. She didn't dare move. The blue-haired man lifted his sword, pointing it directly at Jiang Qin. His eyes burned with murderous intent. This next strike, he growled, will take your head. Jiang Qin remained calm, his eyes locked onto the blue-haired man. He stood firm, ready for whatever came next. The Dragon Yuan pill had fully taken effect. Behind the blue-haired man, the elemental energy dragon surged in size, its glowing eyes flaring as if acknowledging its master's intent. It was ready to strike. With a thunderous stomp, the man shattered the ground beneath him, his energy so intense that the surrounding rocks floated in response. His grip tightened around his sword, his gaze burning with determination. This time, he would end Jiang Qin. Jiang Chen's eyes flicked toward the dragon, and for the first time, a trace of unease crossed his mind. Could he withstand this attack? Without hesitation, the blue-haired man unsheathed his sword. This time, he activated the second form of the Nine King Styles, Descending Dragon's Cut. A surge of overwhelming power erupted from his body as he swung his blade. In an instant, the elemental dragon lunged forward, its massive form tearing through the air, mouth open wide, ready to consume Jiang Chun in a single devastating strike. At that moment, the girl suddenly stepped in front of Jiang Chun. Extending her hands toward the incoming attack, she activated Earth Eternal Shield once again. Jiang Chun instinctively raised an arm to shield his face from the incoming impact, but his eyes widened as he turned toward her. Despite her injuries, she was still willing to block another attack. A brilliant green shield materialized around them just as the dragon struck. The sheer force of the impact shattered the ground, kicking up a thick curtain of smoke. With her arms still outstretched, the girl clenched her teeth, her body trembling. Gritting through the pain, she turned to Jiang Chun, her voice strained. "The Dragon Yuan pill. It's made the Shao family's technique several times stronger," she gasped. "My shield, it won't hold." Cracks began to spread across the protective barrier. Realizing the inevitable, she pushed herself to her limits, determined to buy as much time as possible. Jiang Chun, meanwhile, tightened his grip on his cloak, his gaze locked onto the energy dragon. He couldn't help but be impressed. Each strike from that beast was lethal. The previous attack had already been overwhelming. Yet this man had even more power to unleash. Above them, the blue-haired man leaped forward, his sword raised high. As soon as he saw the shield cracking, a cruel smirk crossed his lips. Without wasting a second, he unleashed multiple descending dragon's cuts in rapid succession, each strike hammering against the already weakened shield. Jiang Chun exhaled sharply and turned his gaze upward. No more hesitation. He raised his hand toward the sky, activating the swarm of insects mark. Against an enemy this ruthless, this powerful, there was no room for mercy. A moment later, the shield shattered completely. Then, a deafening buzz filled the air. From Jiang Chen's outstretched hand, thousands of insects burst forth, swarming into the sky like a living storm. The blue-haired man's eyes widened as he looked up, his arrogant smirk vanishing in an instant. His teeth clenched as a sudden, sinking realization hit him. What is this? Thousands of insects poured out of Jiang Chen's hand, filling the air with a deafening buzz. His gaze remained fixed on the blue-haired man, his voice calm yet menacing. "Get ready." The girl, still sitting on the floor behind him, clutched her wounded shoulder, her eyes wide with disbelief. She had assumed Jiang Chun was from the creation class, but now, she wasn't so sure. Surrounding Jiang Chun, several insects turned their piercing gazes toward the blue-haired man, their bodies tensed, ready to strike. Jiang Chun took a step forward. "Attack!" At his command, the swarm surged toward their target. For the first time, the blue-haired man clenched his teeth, a flicker of panic flashing across his face. He knew one thing for certain: if this many insects attacked at once, survival would be impossible. Still, he refused to back down. Unsheathing his sword, he assumed a defensive stance, his eyes locked onto Jiang Chun. With a deep breath, he activated Descending Dragon Cut. A wave of energy exploded from his blade as he swung furiously, determined to slice through the approaching swarm. "They're just disgusting little bugs," he spat, cutting down insect after insect with each strike. But Jiang Chun remained unmoved, his body still cloaked in the poisonous mist of Little Nine. He extended a hand, his tone laced with mockery. "Do you really believe that's enough?" A horrifying sight unfolded before the blue-haired man's eyes. The severed insect bodies began to regenerate. His breath hitched. "What?" The insects reformed almost instantly and resumed their relentless assault. Realizing he couldn't stop them, panic set in. He swung again, slashing more insects in half, but each time, they regenerated and came back stronger. Jiang Chun observed him with cold amusement. "Let's see how long you can last." The girl, still behind Jiang Chun, turned her head toward him, astonished. Just how powerful was he? The blue-haired man, now furious, tightened his grip on his sword. With a roar, he unleashed another Descending Dragon Cut, this time targeting a large insect directly in front of him. The spiritual dragon materialized once more, its mouth opening wide as it devoured the creature's midair. Unlike his sword, the dragon's energy continuously consumed the insects, preventing them from regenerating. For a moment he smirked, but in that brief moment of confidence, he let his guard down. One of the insects seized the opportunity, lunging from behind and sinking its fangs deep into his arm. A sharp pain shot through his body. His sword slipped from his grip. His head snapped to the side, eyes wide with horror. "This isn't good." Poison was already spreading through his veins, numbing his right hand. Without his sword, his situation had gone from bad to worse. Realizing he had no other choice, he reached into his robes with his uninjured hand. The insect saw the opening and surged forward, closing in on him. But just before they could land another blow, he yanked a small red object from his clothes, raising it high into the air. J protection of life. A surge of crimson energy erupted from his body, forming a protective aura around him. With a sneer, he turned to Jiang Chun, his voice dripping with arrogance. Did you really think a few pathetic insects could kill me, the great Xiao Yuanwu? Jiang Chun stood still, his gaze locked onto Yuanwu. He made no move, nor did he speak, just silently observed. Then, he extended a hand toward Yuanwu, his expression unreadable. What kind of treasure is that? He asked calmly. How does it hold such power? Without waiting for an answer, he gave a simple command. Devour him.